Chapter 24. Is he Zhou Mubai? For the name Zhou Mubai, Qin Daoshan can be described as thunderous. Not only him, the name Zhou Mubai is well known in the entire Guang'an mansion, and even in the hearts of the younger generation of cultivators in Wanxinghai. At the age of 21 he established a foundation, and in less than 50 years he broke through to the Zifu period and became a Zifu cultivator who was less than 100 years old. You must know that the lifespan of the cultivator of the Zifu is 500 years. This also means that Zhou Mubai has more than 400 years to break through the golden core stage. If nothing else, Zhou Mubai is very likely to break through the Jindan stage, and he is also known as the most promising cultivator in Guang'an Prefecture to become a Jindan real person in the past 500 years. Not only that, the real strength of Zhou Mubai is that he is a cultivator on the Qinjiao ranking of the Purple Mansion in Wanxinghai. The Zifu Qinjiao list is one of the lists set up by Qinyuan Jianzong to fight against Izumo. There are 3 complete lists, namely the Foundation Establishment Hidden Dragon list, the Zifu Qinjiao list, and the Jindan Real Person list. In Qin Daoxuan's view, what Qinyuan Jianzong did was just to capture the cultivators' desire to be famous. In Wanxinghai, the largest group of cultivators were loose cultivators, and the second largest group of cultivators were the children of the major cultivators. Although Qinyuan Jianzong is the ruler of Wanxinghai, it is impossible for all monks to fight to the death on the battlefield with a single order. Therefore, Qinyuan Jianzong came up with a way to attract monks to the battlefield with fame and fortune. Jianghu Island's Qin family relied on the military merits to exchange from the Qinyuan Jianzong's inheritance of the refining equipment, the construction method of the ground fire room, and even the wind-chasing sword art and covering rain sword art. These are all benefits. And the Zifu Qinjiao list, which is famous all over the world, belongs to the name. What are monks practicing for? The first place is of course immortality. It's just that there have been hundreds of thousands of years in this realm without the birth of a Mahayana true immortal cultivator who ascended to the upper realm. For the vast majority of monks, the idea of becoming an immortal is nothing but an ethereal dream. In addition to becoming immortal, the second biggest goal pursued by monks is naturally longevity. And if you want to live long, you can't escape the demand for exercises and various cultivation resources. However, most of these things are occupied by Wanxinghai's immortal clan and Qinyuan Jianzong. Ordinary monks want to obtain a lot of cultivation resources. In addition to grabbing food from the Xiuxian clan and Qinyuan Jianzong, they only have to go to the battlefield to obtain military exploits. When a cultivator achieves the goal of longevity, he can't live in emptiness and cultivate for the sake of cultivation all day long, right? The friar will naturally begin to pursue something else. Such as beauty, such as material enjoyment, such as the most important thing for monks, reputation. In the world of immortal cultivation, generally the more senior monks are, the more they tend to value such things as reputation. The 3 lists launched by Qinyuan Jianzong just satisfy the cultivator's desire for name. Using the 2 weapons of name and li, Qinyuan Jianzong tied the entire Wanxinghai cultivator to its chariot. For 400 years, Qinyuan Jianzong drove this chariot to rampage in Xianyun continent, turning the country upside down. Even from the perspective of a modern person like Qin Daoxian, the helm of Qinyuan Jianzong is a remarkable figure. When I saw Zhou Mubai in white clothes fluttering at the front line, standing on the ground. Qin Daoxuan's mentality is quite balanced. After all, he is much younger than Zhou Mubai, and in terms of potential, Qin Daoxian claims that he will never be weaker than the other party. On the other hand, Wei Sihai and Qin Xianhe were full of loneliness in their eyes. After all, in terms of age, both of them are nearly 100 years old. In terms of cultivation, the white figure on the horizon is completely different from them. As monks of the same era, it is impossible to say that the 2 of them have no feelings in their hearts. It's just that the gap between the 2 sides is so big that neither of them dare to feel jealous. This kind of taste, only they can experience it, just when people's minds are different. The battle on the front lines has begun. However, because the distance between the 2 sides is too far, Qin Daoxian and others cannot detect such a long distance with their spiritual sense, and relying on their eyesight, they simply cannot keep up with the speed of the 2 sides. You can only see the sword light flickering on the horizon, and the roar is constant. Unexpectedly, in this level of battle, they are not even qualified to watch. Feeling the impact of the aftermath of the battle, Qin Daoxian sighed. Thanks to them being far enough away. Qin Daoxian even saw that the row of ships in the front was actually destroyed by the aftermath of the battle between Zhou Mubai and the high-ranking merman. And the monks watching the battle also had a ghostly expression, and they all fled. With Zhou Mubai and the high-ranking merman as the center, no one dared to approach within a radius of 10 kilometers. Finally, Accompanied by a sword light that was about 100 feet long, the high-ranking merman fled with injuries, and even the entire merman tribe fled. Another Zifu cultivator from the Zhou family was about to chase, but was stopped by the pale Zhou Mubai. "Three uncles, don't chase after him. Mubai, are you all right?" Seeing Zhou Mubai's pale face, the cultivator he called the third uncle immediately became nervous. Zhou Mubai was the most talented cultivator of his Zhou family's younger generation. Not only did he break through the Zifu period at a young age, but he was also a kendo genius who understood the meaning of swordsmanship at the foundation building level. This is also the biggest reason why Zhou Mubai is listed on the Zifu Tianjiao list. He is a sword cultivator that is even rarer than the Tailingan cultivator. And now Zhou Mubai seems to be injured. This makes the old man not angry. Thinking of this, the old man who was called the third uncle by Zhou Mubai couldn't help but scolded. "Mubai, what kind of one-on-one rule is there for this kind of alien race? Why did you and I get hurt when you and I joined forces to take him down?" After scolding, the old man showed a distressed expression again. "Is your injury serious?" "Third uncle, don't worry, it's just a minor injury." Zhou Mubai shook his head. "My Zhou family captures the merman every year, and the merman clan always resents my Zhou family. If we don't follow the rules and kill that high-ranking merman this time, the merman clan and my Zhou family will never be friends again. There's room for maneuver." "What if there is no room for maneuver? Is my Zhou family still afraid of the mere people?" The third uncle was very disdainful. Seeing the attitude of the third uncle, Zhou Mubai hesitated, finally shook his head and stopped talking. Not only the third uncle but all the monks of the Zhou family felt that the Zhou family was an invincible existence in the 100,000-mile sea area, and no one cared about it. Zhou Mubai knew in his heart that this kind of mentality of the clansmen was not good for the Zhou family. In recent years, several major foundation-building families headed by the Yang family have also become more and more distant from the Zhou family. Even as far as he knows, the Yang family has been secretly uniting with other foundation-building families and wants to build another immortal city to compete with the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture. It's just that because of the distribution of interests and fear of the Zhou family's power, the alliance has not been able to talk smoothly. Chapter 25. 3 days later. In a restaurant in Sangxiafang City. "Fellow Taoist Wei, for the purchase of the store, I would like to thank you for your help. My Qin family is very grateful." "Thank you, senior, for your help." Qin Xianhai and Qin Daoxian raised their wine glasses, toasted a glass of wine to Wei Sihai, and said with a smile, "Everywhere, everyone is a friend, a trivial matter, a trivial matter." Wei Sihai hurriedly picked up the wine glass and said with a smile, "In 3 days, the trivial matter of the mermen attacking Guang'an Mansion had already subsided." In the Sangxiafang city, the topic of discussion among the people gradually shifted from this war to the discussion about the Guang'an sword immortal Zhou Mubai. Push the cup to change the room. The atmosphere at the wine table gradually warmed up. Qin Xinha couldn't help but sighed with his slight drunkenness. "Xianqing of Guang'an Prefecture is really worth an inch of land. I didn't expect the price of this shop in Sangxiafang city to be so high." "Yes." When Wei Sihai heard this, he deeply agreed. He spent the longest time in Sangxiafang City in Guang'an Prefecture, and felt the deepest. Actually, the shops in Sangxiafang City are quite good. A medium-sized storefront can be purchased with only 1,000 spirit stones at most. The most exaggerated is the shops in the core business district. Speaking of exaggerated store prices in the core business district, Wei Sihai shook his head. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian asked calmly, "Are the shops in the core business district expensive?" "Expensive?" Wei Sihai smiled. The shops there can no longer be described only by the word expensive, although the prices on the market are only 10 times more expensive than those in Sangxiafang City. But the fact is that the shops there can't be bought with money, and they are all controlled by the Zhou, Yang, Wu and other immortal clans. Ordinary monks and small families want to intervene, it is as difficult as going to the sky. Maybe he drank a little too much, and Wei Sihai's words began to increase gradually. Coupled with the deep dissatisfaction with the immortal clan, he actually asked Qin Daoxian and the two to talk to them at this moment. "Let's just say that the restaurant under our feet is the property of the Wu family of the immortal cultivator. In Sangxiafang City, restaurants, inns, tooth shops, more than 90% are controlled by the cultivator. In the core business district, such a proportion has reached an exaggerated 10%. We have the largest number of loose cultivators and small clan children, but we get the least. How unfair." At the end, Wei Sihai smashed the wine glass on the wine table heavily. Hearing this, everyone was silent for a while. Half an hour. Qin Xinhe said quietly, "Brother Wei, you are drunk." Hearing this, Wei Sihai suddenly broke into a cold sweat and woke up 7 or 8 points from drinking. It is not a wise thing to scold the immortal clan here loudly. Although almost all of the loose cultivators were dissatisfied with the immortal clan, none of them dared to pour their bitterness out in an open and honest manner. Because of the daring cultivators, they all disappeared without a sound. Seeing this scene, Qin Daoxian hurriedly raised other topics to avoid the embarrassment of the cold field. After half an hour. After the banquet was over, it was getting late. Qin Daoxian and 13th uncle Qin Xinhe walked back to the inn side by side, speechless all the way. Back to the inn. Just when Qin Daoxian was about to practice, Qin Xinhe knocked on the door. "Uncle 13, is there something wrong so late?" "Well, let's go in and talk." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian hurriedly made a gesture of invitation. The two entered the room. Qin Daoxian thought for a while, and cautiously set up a soundproof formation. "Daoxian, since the shop has been prepared, I will sit in the shop next and leave the family affairs to you." Speaking of this, Qin Xian's eyes were complicated. Qin Daoxian's growth rate is far beyond his imagination, not only his personal strength, but also his level of refining. In the past few days, Qin Xinhe has long wanted to understand that Qin Daoxian is not the first-order low-grade craftsman he said, but a senior first-rank high-grade craftsman. Although he doesn't know why his nephew hides his clumsiness in front of him, from another perspective, Qin Daoxian understands the truth of Mu Xiu Yulin when he is only 16 years old. Prove that he is far more mature than he imagined. Thinking of this, Qin Xinhe felt a little relieved about the fact that he was about to hand over the power of the family to Qin Daoxian. The words fall. Qin Xinhe took out a seal from the storage bag. The whole body of this seal is black with a strong aura on it, and it is actually a first-order high-grade magic weapon. This is the patriarch seal of my Chen family. Now I will give it to you. Qin Xinhe handed over the black seal and said solemnly. Qin Daoxian took the seal and nodded solemnly. Finish explaining this. Qin Xinhe immediately asked. "By the way, how did you do the purchase of supplies?" "Everything is ready, just wait for the ship to be loaded tomorrow and you can return to Jianghu Island." Qin Daoxian paused. "This time we have taken out a total of 8,743 spirit stones from the clan library, of which I spent 100 spirit stones to purchase water spirit beads privately, and 500 spirit stones to purchase an inheritance of refining the wind and thunder array instrument. The shop spent 1,000 spirit stones, and the purchase of various materials cost a total of 6,721 spirit stones, and now I still have 422 spirit stones in my hand." Speaking of this, Qin Daoxian smiled bitterly. "This is all our family's belongings." Hearing that the family's 300-year savings was actually spent on this trip, Qin Xinhe was mentally prepared, but still felt a burst of heartache. Seeing Qin Xian's ugly face, Qin Daoxian hurriedly comforted him. "Uncle 13, these are the inevitable expenses for the development of the family. Besides, we will definitely be able to earn it back 10-fold or 100-fold in the future." Hearing this, Qin Xinhe sighed. "I hope so." As if thinking of something, Qin Xinhe took out a jade bottle from the storage bag. "By the way, this is a little gift I bought for you in the core business district a few days ago, accept it." Qin Daoxian curiously took the jade bottle and opened it. A strong medicinal fragrance emanated from the jade bottle. Seeing this, Qin Daoxian quickly sealed the bottle. Gathering Qi Dan. It turned out to be a first-order mid-grade elixir that assists cultivators in the Qi refining period Qi gathering pill. According to Qin Daoxian's understanding, the price of a Qi gathering pill is as high as 50 spirit stones, which is almost equivalent to a first-order low-grade magic weapon. For such an expensive Qi gathering pill, there are actually 10 pills in the bottle. "Daoxian, when the family obviously had the ability to buy Tongmai pill for you, I didn't buy it for you. Have you ever resented me in your heart?" Why did Uncle 13 say this? Daoxian has never thought of it this way. The price of Tongmai pill is as high as 500 spirit stones. If it was me, I wouldn't buy such an expensive spirit pill for my descendants when my family could not make ends meet. Qin Xinhe shook his head. "But do you know? When I saw you use the wind-chasing sword art of the Deshang realm a few days ago, I regretted it. Although 500 spirit stones are too many, I have delayed the cultivation time of a genius cultivator in my family for 5 years." Qin Daoxian didn't know how to answer this. "Daoxian, I can see that your future path is farther than me or any ancestor of the Qin family, but Uncle 13 wants to ask you one thing." Speaking of this, Qin Xinhe looked at Qin Daoxian with red eyes. but according to Uncle 13's orders. No matter what the future holds, don't abandon your family, okay? Because here is your roots. Hearing this plea, Qin Daoxian was overwhelmed by an unspeakable emotion. With red eyes, Qin Daoxian nodded heavily and said, "No matter what happens in the future, Daoxian will never abandon the family." Very good. A gratified smile appeared on Qin Ziyan's face. Chapter 26. The next day. Guang'an Port Terminal. As trucks after trucks loaded all kinds of spiritual minerals onto the Canglong cargo ship, Qin Xinhe looked at the busy clansmen on the cargo ship, turned to look at Qin Daoxian and said, "This trip is a long way back to Jianghu Island. I wish you all the best. You guys are going well." Qin Daoxian nodded. "Uncle 13, take care of yourself too. When the family's crafting workshop is built and the output of the magical tools is stable, I will come to you with the refined magical tools. Don't worry, with the magic tools you gave me yesterday, the magic weapon shop is enough to support it for a while." Qin Xinhe touched the storage bag on his waist and smiled. Qin Daoxian glanced at Uncle 13's storage bag, and thought to himself, this magic weapon is probably far from enough. The magic tools he handed over to Qin Xinhe yesterday are some of the fine magic tools that he has refined during his 5-year learning process. Among them there are 23 first-order low-grade magic tools, 11 first-order middle-grade magic tools, and a total of 34 magic tools. In Qin Ziyan's opinion, these instruments are a huge amount, and the market value is about 3,000 spirit stones. Even due to the shortage of high-quality instruments in the market, the actual value may be higher. Qin Xinhe felt that with so many magical tools, it was enough to support the opening of the magical tool store for a period of time. But obviously, Qin Xinhe still underestimated the demand for high-quality instruments by the scattered cultivators in the immortal city of Guang'an. From Qin Daoxian's point of view, if this magic weapon is thrown into the huge magic weapon market of Sangxiafeng City, it will be digested in an instant if it can't even turn out a wave. Of course, Qin Daoxian is not easy to explain these speculations, otherwise when the magic weapon is unsaleable, it will be slapped in the face. Correct. Seemingly remembering something, Qin Xinhe changed his words. "Daoxian, why did you name the family's magic weapon shop Hongyin Feijin shop instead of Chen's magic weapon shop? Do you mean that the next main product of our family is Feijin?" "That's right." Qin Daoxian nodded and explained, "In Wuxia, due to the influence of Qinyuan Jianzong, the proportion of monks using flying swords is as high as 90%, and the market for flying swords is the broadest. The reason why I chose this name is that my Qin family has a place in the market of flying swords." As for the deeper brand value, Qin Daoxian couldn't explain it to Qin Xinhe for a while, so he simply didn't explain it. The commercial development of Xianqing in Guang'an Prefecture is still at a relatively low level. No matter what the shops here sell, most of them have vague names. For example, Wu's Magical Item Shop, XX Pill Medicine Shop, XX Treasure House, and so on. Almost no magic weapon store is specialized in sales. In other words, they do not have the concept of vertical field at all. And this magic weapon shop opened by the Qin family is very targeted at the consumer groups, loose cultivators and children of small families. This group of consumers has two characteristics. One, the number is huge. Second, the requirements for the quality of the instruments are not high. And these 2 points are the biggest advantages of the Qin family. The huge number of consumer groups proves that the production requirements of the products are very high, otherwise the consumer market cannot be satisfied. The requirements for the rank of the magical instruments are not high, which means that Qin Daoxian, a first-rank high-grade artifact refiner, can meet the production conditions. Coupled with the fact that the Qin family specializes in the sales of flying sword-like instruments, Qin Daoxian believes that the brand of Hongyin Feijin will be an instant hit. After half an hour, on the aft deck, Qin Daoxian waved at Qin Xinhe, whose figure was gradually blurred, and turned back to the cabin. The cabin of the Canglong is divided into 3 layers. The first and second floors belong to the warehouse and are the largest in area. The third floor is the cabin for the crew. Qin Daoxian also lived on the 3rd floor, but unlike the 5 ordinary Qin clan members who were crowded into one room, the cabin where Qin Daoxian lived was a luxurious single room. 7 days later. Southwest waters of Wuxia. The Canglong sailed against the wind and waves in the vast sea. Inside the cabin, Qin Daoxian sat cross-legged on the futon with his eyes closed. During the voyage of Wanxinghai, he could not practice Guiyuan Gong, so Qin Daoxian devoted all his energy to the practice of wind-chasing sword art. I have to say that this time, wind-chasing sword art has broken through to the realm of great achievement, greatly increasing his strength. Otherwise, only relying on that first-rank top-grade flying snow sword would at most only be able to injure the blood-spotted sea snake, and would not be able to kill it in one blow. Therefore, Qin Daoxian became more interested in the practice of wind-chasing sword art. After a stick of incense. After the epiphany was over, Qin Daoxian opened his eyes. I didn't expect that the cultivation of wind-chasing sword art was so difficult after reaching the realm of Deshang. After 2 epiphanies, it was worthy to increase the power increase of Feijian from 60% to 80%. Qin Daoxian sighed. Actually, as early as the 2nd epiphany, Qin Daoxian's wind-chasing sword art reached the realm of great achievement, and the increase in the power of the flying sword also reached 60%. After that, he had 2 epiphanies in succession, and only increased the power of the flying sword by 20%. It must be said that Qin Daoxian felt a little discouraged. This is the result of his cultivation under the condition that his comprehension has increased tenfold. If he didn't rely on the ability of Hongmeng Enlightenment Daojing to store his comprehension and only rely on Qin Daoxian to cultivate by himself, I am afraid that if he was given another 10 years, he might not be able to cultivate wind-chasing sword art from Deshang to the current state. No wonder there is no record of the perfect state in this sword art. Perhaps even the founder of this sword art is not optimistic that the younger generation can cultivate this sword art to the perfect level. Qin Daoxian shook his head. Indeed, for a Qi-refining cultivator, to cultivate a first-order sword art to the perfect state is really difficult for a strong man. Generally speaking, cultivators in the foundation building stage spend a lot of energy, but it is possible to cultivate the first-order sword art to the perfect state. But there is no need, because they are already qualified to practice more advanced second-order sword tactics or second-order spells. As long as a base-building cultivator spends a few years of effort to cultivate the second-order sword art to the realm of minor achievement, the power increase of the flying sword is no less than that of the first-order sword art at the perfect level. Why bother to look farther? Performing the wind-chasing sword art that he had just realized in the cabin, Qin Daoxian got up and walked out of the cabin. At this time, a poignant song rang in his ears and Qin Daoxian felt dizzy. Not good. Qin Daoxian bit the tip of his tongue sharply, and his consciousness instantly woke up. When he flew to the deck of the Canglong, his consciousness swept away and found that except for him, all the clansmen on the whole ship were slumped to the ground and fainted. Looking down from the sky. In the sea water below the Canglong, one after another black shadows swim under the water, densely packed with countless numbers. Most of these shadows are more than 10 feet long, and they are obviously not human. Listening to the poignant singing in his ears, Qin Daoxian took out the flying snow sword and recited the Hongmeng Enlightenment classic, silently, resisting the invasion of the sea of knowledge by the singing. But the next moment, Qin Daoxian's will to resist was instantly disintegrated. In the sea, a strong figure with fish tail stepped on the surging waves and appeared in front of him. Next to this strong figure is a petite figure. It's you. Seeing this person in front of him, Qin Daoxian's heart sank little by little. Chapter 27, On the Sea. The Canglong was controlled by an invisible force and had stopped sailing. The waves crashed against the bow of the Canglong, making a rushing sound. In front of the bow of the Canglong, a sturdy, middle-aged man with bronze-colored muscles all over his body and a resolute face stepped on the waves and looked down at Qin Daoxian, who was standing on the bow deck. Mermaid. However, the merman in front of him seemed to be seriously injured, and there was a huge gap in his chest, and the sword energy was in between, making the wound difficult to heal. The merman in front of him was the one who fought against Zhou Mubai, the arrogant son of the Zhou family in Guang'an Mansion 10 days ago. Seeing this scene, Qin Daoxian had a hint of despair in his eyes. Not to mention the tens of thousands of mermaid ethnic groups under the sea. The two just stared at each other silently. A long time. Qin Daoxian put down the flying snow sword under enormous psychological pressure, clasped his fist and said, Junior Qinyuan Jianzong has entrusted the clan. Qin Daoxian, the young patriarch of the Chen family in Chongping County, Shuanghu Island, has seen the senior. Don't blame him for pulling the banner of Qinyuan Jianzong. It is really too powerful for the merman in front of him, and Qin Daoxian can't compete at all. He estimated that this merman had at least a cultivation level above the middle stage of the human purple palace. Otherwise, it is absolutely impossible to fight Zhou Mubai on the Zifu Tianjiao list. As for the banner of the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture, did he think he didn't die fast enough? Really? Hearing the name Qinyuan Jianzong, there was a flash of fear in the eyes of the merman in front of him. Although his eyes changed quickly, he was still caught by Qin Daoxuan's peripheral vision. Humph! Human monk, you don't have to use Qinyuan sword sect to scare me. Little life saved. Hearing that the middle-aged merman was willing to speak, Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. What he was most afraid of was that the other party didn't even want to talk about it, so he directly attacked the killer. Senior misunderstood, Junior has no intention of this. Qin Daoxian said with sincerity, it's just because the abominable Zhou family exploits our children too much, and I really don't want to be with them. While Qin Daoxian drew a clear line with the Zhou family, he explained that he was by no means a threat to the other party. Unsurprisingly, after hearing the name of the Zhou family, the middle-aged merman's face was full of haze, and he obviously hated this family very much in his heart. Seeing the other party's emotional out-of-control appearance, Qin Daoxian was beating his heart. Don't get angry and kill him by mistake, then he can't deal with it, Qin Daoxian secretly said. The middle-aged merman in front of him is, after all, the leader of a merman tribe. Although he was extremely resentful, he quickly adjusted his emotions. I saw him slowly lowering his body, looked at Qin Daoxian flatly and said, "Are you here from Guang'an Mansion?" "Senior, this junior sailed here from Guang'an Mansion 7 days ago." Qin Daoxian bowed. The middle-aged merman nodded non-committally, and immediately seemed to find something, only to see him beckon lightly. A red spiritual ore flew out from the cargo hold of the Canglong, and he was holding it in his palm. It was the copper ore that Qin Daoxian bought in Xianqing, Guang'an Prefecture. Although he didn't know what the other party meant, Qin Daoxian didn't dare to resist at all, so he lowered his head and waited for the other party's decision. "Human monk, what is this?" The middle-aged merman held the copper mine and asked. "Senior, this is called red copper ore, which is a kind of spiritual ore." Qin Daoxian answered every question he had and was very well behaved. "Is this weapon in your hand made of red copper ore?" The middle-aged merman pointed to the flying snow sword in Qin Daoxuan's hand and continued. "Senior, this flying sword in my hand is indeed made of spirit ore, but it's not red copper ore but several other spirit ore." Hearing this, the middle-aged merman and the petite female merman next to him looked at each other and nodded. "You are quite honest, unlike other human monks who are cunning and cunning." Qin Daoxian hurriedly bowed his body lower. "Thank you for your praise, senior." "Okay, stand up straight and talk." The middle-aged merman waved his hand. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that his little life was saved today. "Let me ask you, don't all of your small family members like human monks go to Guang'an House to sell spiritual ores? Why do you buy so many spiritual ores?" Hearing this, Qin Daoxian struggled in his heart, and finally chose to tell some truth. "Senior, because there are artifact refiners in the younger generation's family, they need to buy spiritual ore and go back to refining the instruments." "Is this weapon in your hand the magic weapon you said?" He pointed to the flying snow sword in Qin Daoxuan's hand and asked. Qin Daoxian decisively handed the flying snow sword over and said, "Exactly, senior, please take a look." The middle-aged merman beckoned, and Fixuajin flew towards him. I saw him take the flying snow sword, hand it to the female merman beside him and instructed, "Luo Air, come and try." "Yes, my father." The female merman known as Luo Air took the Fei Shui sword and entered a demonic force. Immediately, Fei Shui sword's aura sword, and at the tip of the sword, a 9-foot-long sword light was swollen, and even the air was slightly distorted. "What a sharp weapon!" The female merman said with emotion. "If our tribe had such sharp weapons, the Zhou family would not have thought about arresting the sisters so easily and wantonly." When it comes to the female merman captured by the Zhou family's mercenary team, the merman named Luo Air has a pretty face and is cold. Qin Daoxian didn't say a word, and tried to be as transparent as possible to avoid suffering unwarranted disasters. "Father, you said, can we?" "What do you mean?" Facing the two voice transmissions in front of him, Qin Daoxian had to wait quietly. After a cup of tea, the middle-aged merman said again, "Human monk, we have a business we would like to talk to your family about. I wonder if you are interested." Probably guessing what, Qin Daoxian reluctantly said, "I don't know which aspect of business the predecessors are referring to." After all, the middle-aged merman is the leader of a clan, and at a glance he can see the reluctance in Qin Daoxuan's eyes. He frowned and said, "Human monks, our mere people are not your human race and we won't do that kind of forced buying and selling, don't worry about that." "Senior, forgive me, this is not what this junior means." Qin Daoxian hurriedly explained. Who knows that the other party waved his hand and said, "Look at the price we gave first." As he spoke, he made a look at Luo Air, the female merman beside him. The female merman named Luo Air nodded knowingly and plunged her head towards the sea. The work of half a column of incense. Luo Air stepped on the waves and appeared in front of the two again. This time, when she saw a few things in her hands, Qin Daoxuan's eyes suddenly lit up, and his saliva almost came out. Spirit shells, spirit ore, and what the Qin family lacks the most, spirit stone. As long as you agree to this business, our mere people will have as many of these things as we want. The middle-aged merman looked at Qin Daoxian. Seeing these treasures, Qin Daoxian immediately stopped pretending to be cautious, and said excitedly, "What kind of business the senior wants to talk about, please tell me clearly." I can't blame him for changing his face faster than flipping a book. Chapter 28. After listening to the narrative of the middle-aged merman, Qin Daoxian was silent. "Senior, what do you mean you want to buy magic weapons from our family?" "Exactly." The middle-aged shark nodded. After pondering for a moment, Qin Daoxian shook his head. "Senior, I am afraid that the younger generation will not be able to agree to your request." Hearing this, the middle-aged merman hadn't spoken yet, but Luo Li, who was beside him, was anxious. "Why is this? Do you think the price we gave is not enough? If so, we can." Before the other party could finish speaking, Qin Daoxian shook his head with a wry smile. "This girl, it's not like that." He paused. "After all, your mermen and mine belong to different races. If your mere people buy magic weapons from our Qin family to kill our children, let's not say whether my Qin family's conscience is good or not, Qinyuan Jianzong will not let our Qin family go." Hearing this explanation, the middle-aged man and the female merman named Luo Li were all silent. "Different races are not negotiable. Aren't you afraid that I will kill you?" Seeing this, the middle-aged merman faintly threatened. "Senior can naturally kill me, but my Qin family, like the Zhou family, is the imperial family of Qinyuan Jianzong. If the senior did such an evil act, Qinyuan Jianzong will definitely seek justice for my Qin family in the future. Seniors, don't forget, this junior is a craftsman. As long as the seniors understand the importance of Qinyuan Jianzong to craftsmen and alchemists, they will know that what the juniors say is true." Speaking of this, Qin Daoxian looked at the other party angrily, posing as if he was dying. Seeing that Qin Daoxian suddenly became soft and hard, the middle-aged merman suddenly felt a little embarrassed. From the bottom of his heart, he never wanted to be an enemy of the human race. After all, the human race is the absolute overlord in this world, and his mermaid race can't even win against the small Zhou family, let alone compete with such a behemoth as the Qinyuan sword sect. It's just that sometimes you don't want to be an enemy of others and others just want to bully you. Just like the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture. In order to breed Lingbei, they did not hesitate to arrest the merman women, and even imprison merman men as stallions, allowing them to reproduce and serve as slaves for the Zhou family for life. For hundreds of years. The mermen have resisted countless times, but each time ended in failure. This time, the resistance of the Mer people was the largest, but it was easily defeated by the Zhou family. In desperation, the middle-aged merman had to lead the clan to relocate in order to avoid the arrest of the Zhou family. Because of this, he met Qin Daoxuan's cargo ship on the way. "A long time." The middle-aged merman said faintly, "I can swear on behalf of my Luo clan's merman family, and I will never use the magic weapon sold to us by your Qin family to kill any human child." The Avenue Oath. Hearing this oath, Qin Daoxian was moved. In this world, the Great Tao Oath is one of the most stringent oaths for practitioners, and another oath equivalent to it is the Netherworld Blood Oath. It's just that the Netherworld Blood Oath is vicious and abnormal. Even if it doesn't violate the oath, there is the possibility of backlash, so few people make this kind of oath. Seeing the middle-aged merman make such an oath, Qin Daoxian estimated that the heat was almost over. If you push the other party again, it will be counterproductive. After thinking about it, Qin Daoxian asked, "I would take the liberty to ask, since your Mer people don't use weapons to deal with my human race, why do you insist on buying magic tools from my Qin family?" Hearing this, Luo Li on the side said angrily, "Do you think any race can live as easily as your human race without foreign enemies? My mermaid race lives in the deep sea, how many monsters and alien races are there? If there is no force to defend the clan, the only way to wait for my merman clan is to perish." After speaking, the eyes of this beautiful mermaid woman dimmed. This time, the Zhou family forced the entire family to migrate, and there would inevitably be a war with other races in the underwater world, and it was unknown how many brothers and sisters would die by then. Thinking of this, Luo Li's expression became even more depressed. Qin Daoxian couldn't understand the hardships of the Mer people, but the monster chaos in Chongping County let him know that the world is not without danger, especially in the deep sea. Pretend to think for a moment. Qin Daoxian nodded in embarrassment. Okay, since your mermaid is not buying weapons to deal with my human, then this business can naturally be done, but the specific price needs to be discussed carefully. With that said, Qin Daoxian took out 2 flying swords from the storage bag, the first-order low-grade flying swords and the first-order middle-grade flying swords. Look at it. Qin Daoxian handed the flying sword over. The two took the flying sword and examined it carefully. Luo Li frowned and said, "You man, these 2 weapons are not as good as one, and neither is comparable to the one you showed us before." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian said with a smile, "This is natural, and the price of the instruments is different for different grades." As he said that, he looked at the middle-aged merman and said, "It's like the magic weapon that hurt the senior, it's totally expensive." Hearing this, the middle-aged merman remembered the flying sword used by Zhou Mubai, and nodded in agreement. If it is that weapon, it is indeed a priceless treasure. Hearing this, Luo Li's beautiful eyes lit up and she asked expectantly, "Does your Qin family have that kind of treasure to sell?" Cough cough, Qin Daoxian coughed awkwardly, "The girl is joking. Besides, my Qin family has a magic weapon of this level, I'm afraid you can't afford the price." "That's right." Luo Li's voice gradually decreased. Seeing that the topic was being led off by the other party, Qin Daoxian hurriedly turned the topic back and said, These 3 instruments are first-order low-grade, first-grade middle-grade and first-grade high-grade instruments. And their prices are 500, 1,000 and 2,000 spirit stones respectively. At present, my Qin family can refine a lot of them, only the first-order low-grade magic tools, that is, the price of 500 spirit stones." Qin Daoxian almost didn't hold his breath when he shouted that the first-order low-grade flying sword needed 500 spirit stones. Just when he was about to accept the price bargaining of the Mer people, Luo Li said with joy, "This weapon can be bought for only 500 broken stones? This is too cheap. And this weapon, as long as it costs 2,000 stones, shouldn't you be afraid of us and deliberately say such a low price?" Hearing this price, Luo Li immediately had a good impression on Qin Daoxian. He felt that the human race was different from the human race. Compared with the wicked people of the Zhou family, the young man in front of him was simply a good person. Hear this. Qin Daoxian felt that he seemed to underestimate the wealth of the underwater world. Not only him, all the monks in Wanxinghai may have ignored the great wealth of the deep-sea world. But if you think about it, it's impossible. The cultivator said that it was omnipotent in the sky, but Qin Daoxian knew that low-level cultivators simply did not have the ability to go to the underwater world to mine. According to Qin Daoxian's understanding, this world is obviously different from the spherical world of the previous life, and in terms of its vastness, it is even more difficult to know how many times it is away from the earth. In the same way, the depth of the sea in this world is not known to exceed the previous life by many times. In this way, the pitiful infuriating chi of the low-level cultivator could not resist the terrifying pressure brought by the deep sea at all. Therefore, the development of the underwater world has become nonsense. The mermen are different. They have special racial talents that allow them to survive in the underwater world freely, which other terrestrial races cannot envy. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian's gaze towards Luo Li suddenly became extremely eager. Chapter 29. Why are you looking at me like that? Am I wrong? Luo Li felt a little hairy at the sight of Qin Daoxian and said angrily. Cough cough, Miss Luo's words are bad. Qin Daoxian coughed and cleared his throat. Perhaps in the eyes of Senior and Miss Luo, the price of magic instruments is low, but we have already earned you money by selling them to you at this price. So Miss Luo doesn't have to think that I lowered the price of magic weapons because I was afraid of you. Qin Daoxian's businesslike appearance made Luo Li not sure how to answer. Okay. Since we are both satisfied with the price of the magic weapon, let's trade at this price. The middle-aged merman clapped. Qin Daoxian was afraid that the other party would regret it, so he nodded quickly and said, yes. After the initial cooperation intention was reached, the atmosphere between the two parties was relieved immediately. The middle-aged merman pointed at the merman woman next to him and said with a smile, "This is my daughter Luo Li. From now on, she will represent my Luo clan and be responsible for the transaction of magical instruments between our two clans." After speaking, the middle-aged merman gave Luo Li a look beside him. Luo Li nodded knowingly and slammed it from her waist, and a scale was buckled down by her. "Human monk, this is the scale of my life. With it, you can contact me anywhere within a radius of 10,000 miles. Luo Li's pretty face turned pale. After taking the scale, Qin Daoxian silently put it back into the storage bag. When we settle the clan, we will come to complete the transaction with you. The middle-aged merman looked at Qin Daoxian quietly. Human monk, when the time comes. I hope you don't lie to us. Don't dare. Qin Daoxian bowed. That's good. After speaking, the middle-aged merman and the merman woman named Luo Li jumped into the water with a plop and disappeared. Looking down from the sky, the dark crowd of mermen under the sea gradually faded away and eventually disappeared. After half an hour, the clansmen on the Tsanglong woke up one by one. When the panicked clansmen gradually calmed down under the comfort of Qin Daoxian, everyone drove the Tsanglong again and continued toward Jianghu Island. 20 days later, the Tsanglong returned to the deep water port of Jianghu Island safely, and there were no more accidents on the way. Jianghu Island, Chongqing County. Qin's Ancestral Hall. Qin's Ancestral Hall is not only the ancestral hall of the Qin family on Jianghu Island, but also the highest power center of the family. In the past 300 years, the various forms of clan meetings presided over here have determined the fate and rise and fall of the Qin clan. Qin Daoxian sat in the original position of Qin Xinhe, looking down at the Qin clan standing in the 2 rows below, and couldn't help feeling emotional. The Qin family is really dreadful. In a dignified immortal clan, he was the only cultivator in the clan, and it made people laugh when he said it. Shaking his head, he threw the distracting thoughts out of his mind. Qin Daoxian, who occupies the throne of the patriarch, said, because the patriarch needs to sit in the family shop in the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture, I will temporarily serve as the patriarch of the family in the future. After finishing speaking, Qin Daoxian took out the black seal symbolizing the patriarch's identity in front of everyone. After listening to Qin Daoxian's words, everyone was not surprised. In their hearts, Qin Daoxian, the only new generation cultivator of the Qin family, was the perfect candidate for the future patriarch of the family. Coupled with the old patriarch's advanced age, they were already mentally prepared for Qin Daoxian to take over as the patriarch. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, and after discussing in a low voice, they bowed their hands and said, "See you, the young patriarch. You are exempt." Qin Daoxian waved his hand. In the early years, because I concentrated on cultivation, I didn't participate much in family affairs, so I was not familiar with everyone, but in the future, I hope everyone can work together to assist me and develop my Jianghu Island Qin family. After hearing this, Qin Ji, the magistrate of Chongqing County, who was ranked first in the right column, stood up, and took the lead in bowing his hands, saying, I, the county magistrate of Chongqing County, will definitely cooperate with the young patriarch, rectify the family affairs and develop the family. Qin Daoxian nodded in satisfaction. Seeing this, Qin Liangyu, the former head of the copper mine in the first column on the left, was secretly annoyed. Such a good opportunity to show loyalty was actually snatched up by Qin Ji. Thinking of this, Qin Liangyu was unwilling to be reconciled and quickly said, We, the copper mine, are also willing to follow the orders of the young patriarch. Very good. I can see everyone's thoughts. Qin Daoxian smiled and said, Right now there are indeed a few important things for you to do. Seeing everyone put on a look of listening intently, Qin Daoxian looked at the magistrate of Chongqing County and said, Qin Ji. Subordinates are here. Qin Ji bowed and responded. My Qin family in Jianghu Island, how many households are there in total? Chief Patriarch, Jianghu Island has 774 households with a total of 3,873 people, including 597 households with a population of 2,987 in Chongqing County, and 177 households in each village with a population of 886. The population of the village is so small, Qin Daoxian frowned. How was the family's food problem solved? Young Patriarch, the food issue. In the past, the old patriarch bought food from Guang'an Prefecture to subsidize the clan. Seeing Qin Daoxian's unpleasant expression, Qin Ji said cautiously, Then, what about the specific demographics of the family? Hearing this question, Qin Ji was stunned for a while and said with some uncertainty, Dare to ask the young patriarch what is the demographic structure? Qin Daoxian knew that he actually said the words of his previous life in a hurry. So he explained with a calm expression, It is the detailed proportion of the family population according to gender and age. This? Qin Ji was sweating profusely and was at a loss. He really didn't know this question. But it was obviously not the county magistrate's style to sit still, so he cupped his hands and said, You young patriarch, the county government does not have statistics on the specific demographic structure of the family, but, as far as my subordinates know, my Qin family is young. The population has always been larger and there are plenty of males. Chen Ji thought that Chen Daoxian was worried about the shortage of Chen's men, so he emphasized the characteristics of Chen's sufficient men. Who knows that Chen Daoxian was not happy when he heard this answer, but his heart became more and more heavy. The abundance of males means that there are not enough females and an unbalanced ratio between males and females. This means that the Qin family cannot expand the family population in a short period of time. The number of family members is directly related to the growth of the family cultivator group, which can be described as the lifeblood of the family. After rubbing his swollen head, Qin Daoxian finally knew how much pressure Qin Xinhe had put on himself over the years so that he could concentrate on cultivating and learning the artifact. Ignoring this question, Qin Daoxian continued to ask, "How many fields are there in the clan?" Hearing this question, Qin Ji breathed a sigh of relief. "Chief Patriarch, my Qin family has a total of 4,657 acres of fertile land. With so many fields, there are only 177 village households. Are the farmers farming?" This? Qin Ji wiped the sweat from his forehead, not knowing how to answer. He couldn't say that most of the fields here belonged to wealthy families. Even in the Xiuxian world, the problem of land annexation within the Xiuxian family has always existed. Even the small Qin family has such problems. It's just that the monks are usually high above, and they don't care about these issues at all. If the mortal trouble is really serious, the monks will use their extraordinary power to forcibly smash the inherent class and redistribute the benefits. Seeing that the other party could not answer, Qin Daoxian continued to ask, "Then how big is the land area of my Jianghu island, should your county government know?" "I don't know, my subordinates don't know." Feeling the increasing power of Qin Daoxian, the county magistrate Qin Ji didn't even dare to lift his head. Chapter 30, Clan Meeting. Qin Ji was sweating profusely, and he found that the young patriarch Qin Daoxian felt more pressure on him than the old patriarch who ignored the common things. At least the old patriarch will not ask all the questions when he manages family affairs. Qin Xinhe doesn't care about such issues as the mortal population structure and the distribution of fertile land within the clan. In Qin Xian's eyes, the most important goal of the Qin clan on Jianghu Island is to breed a spiritual vein that belongs to the Qin family. Only in this way, the Qin family can let go of their hands to cultivate younger generations and expand the family cultivator group. Otherwise, even if the younger generation with spiritual roots is discovered, the Qin family will not be able to let him embark on the path of cultivation. Because the family now has only one spiritual eye, it cannot support more monks to practice. There are more than 3,000 members of the Qin family. According to the probability of a mortal being born with a spiritual root, probably one of the 100 mortals has a spiritual root. In other words, the current Qin clan hides at least 30 seeds of immortal cultivation with spiritual roots. But suffering from lack of spiritual energy, they could not let them embark on the path of cultivation. Even if they were forcibly brought on the path of cultivation, the final result of these people could only be to betray the family and become a loose cultivator. A long time. Qin Daoxian said, 3 things. He raised 3 fingers. First, I ordered the county government to start immediately to investigate the detailed demographic structure of the family. I want to know the number of children under the age of 10, the number of young adults between the ages of 10 and 40, and the number of young adults between the ages of 40 and 60. The number of middle-aged and elderly people, and the elderly population over the age of 60. In addition, the number of fertile couples in the family and the number of unmarried males should also be investigated in detail. Hearing this, Qin Ji nodded like pounding garlic. Second, who is responsible for public building matters in Chongqing County? Young Patriarch, his subordinates are the generals who are in charge of civil engineering construction in Chongqing County. Behind Qin Ji, an old man in his 60s walked out tremblingly and said nervously, "Very well, you take note. From now on, investigate the land area of Jianghu Island, as well as the approximate distribution of freshwater resources and mineral resources, and draw up a detailed map and submit it." Subordinates obey. Wait until the old man leaves. This third thing. Qin Daoxian glanced at Jianghu who was about to retire. It's still your task. The figure of the old man who had just withdrawn immediately stopped, and then left the team again, bowing and waiting. How many craftsmen are there in the family now? Chief Patriarch, there are 271 craftsmen in the family, including 184 construction craftsmen, 26 carpenters, 41 blacksmiths and 20 other craftsmen. When it comes to the craftsmen in the clan, the older ones will be very precious. Hearing that there are 184 construction craftsmen, Qin Daoxuan's face finally looks better. Very well, the third thing is that the family wants to build an industrial area. Regarding the idea of Jianghu Island Industrial Zone, Qin Daoxian had this idea 5 years ago. It's just that the Rongling furnace hadn't been developed by him at that time. And the most important force in this world is the immortal cultivator, and Qin Daoxian can't give up the basics and let the Qin family realize the industrialization step by step, starting with the steam engine. Besides, even if the industrialization achievements of the previous life can be established, it will take hundreds of years. By that time, Qin Daoxian, who had devoted himself to it, would have been cold, and he would not have the energy and time to practice. He hadn't forgotten what was most fundamental to him. In addition to inheriting the legacy of Qin's ancestors, Qin Daoxuan's development and growth of the family is also an important reason, and that is to provide the necessary resources for his cultivation. Well known. The further back the monks practice, the more resources they consume. Wealth partner law land. Can be summed up in one word: resource. Industrial area? The veteran Wuxia was stunned, another word he had never heard before. Qin Daoxian could not explain to him what an industrial zone was, but only told him the land use standards for the industrial zone. Qin Daoxian, who is a traveler, is clear. The establishment of an industrial zone is not a simple matter. It needs all the conditions to be mature in order to do so. First of all, the industrial zone needs to have a leading industry to drive other upstream and downstream industries in the industrial zone to form a complete industrial chain. Qin Daoxian was able to fulfill this condition. The magic weapon factory that is about to be built is such a leading industry. In addition to leading industries, the establishment of industrial zones must have policy support. This condition is not a problem for Qin Daoxian, who is completely eloquent. As for the remaining industrial land, a complete social service system, and the construction of factories, this is also not a big problem for Qin, who can concentrate all his strengths. The only problem now is the Qin family has no qualified industrial workers. Although the magic weapon factory to be built is just a small workshop the size of a sparrow. But Qin Daoxian estimated that at least 12 to 15 mature Rongling furnace operators would be needed to cooperate with him in order to produce instruments with maximum efficiency. Think of this. Qin Daoxian waved his hand and said, "Qin Yekeo and Qin Liangyu stay, and the others can retreat first." Everyone glanced at Qin Daoxian, then looked at each other again and said, "Young patriarch, your subordinates retire. Wait until the people leave." Only Qin Daoxian, Qin Liangyu and an unknown veteran were left in the entire ancestral hall. Qin Daoxian glanced at the roster of county officials and found the name of the veteran Zuyu, Qin Beiwang. As the head of the copper mine, Qin Liangyu is the person in the entire family who is most familiar with Qin Daoxian. Not only was Qin Daoxian in charge of inspecting the output of copper ore mines every year before, but also because Qin Daoxian often lacked copper ore in refining equipment, he went to the mine to beat the autumn wind. After coming and going, the two became more familiar with each other. Of course, this kind of familiarity is what Qin Liangyu thinks. In Qin Daoxuan's heart, his mine chief is not much different from other Qin clan members. However, with the violent mining of copper ore during this period of time, the copper ore veins were completely exhausted. Qin Liangyu, the head of the copper mine, also lost his former position. Although he still stood side by side with Qin Ji, the county magistrate in the clan. But Qin Liangyu knew in his heart that after losing his identity as the head of the copper mine, he could no longer be compared with Qin Ji. Qin Daoxian didn't care about Qin Liangji's thoughts, but turned his attention to Qin Beiwang. "Qin Yekeo, did you understand what I said about the location of the industrial zone?" "My subordinates understand." Qin Beiwang with gray temples nodded hurriedly. In addition to the site selection of the industrial zone, there is also the construction of the factory building. With that said, Qin Daoxian took out a stack of blueprints from the storage bag. This is the structural design of the factory that he has carefully drawn over the past 5 years. As an old craftsman, Qin Beiwang, although he was new to this design drawing, quickly understood the factory building drawn on this drawing. He nodded immediately and said, "If the workshop's house is built in this style, our craftsmen will have no problem." Hearing this promise, Qin Daoxian felt better. "How long will it take for you to build this factory?" 6 months is enough." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian frowned. "Why does it take so long?" "Young patriarch, according to the material requirements on this drawing, high-quality bluestone materials are needed to build the workshop, and there are not many masons in the clan, so the speed of polishing bluestone may be a little slow. In the end, Qin Baiwang's voice became smaller and smaller. Chapter 31. Half a year is too long. Qin Daoxian shook his head. He looked at Qin Baiwang, who was silent, and thought for a while. Forget it, I'll go to your stone processing workshop later. Yes, young patriarch. Hearing this, Qin Baiwang breathed a sigh of relief. After explaining to Qin Yekeo, who was in charge of building the family's public buildings, Qin Daoxian turned to look at Qin Liangyu, the former head of the copper mine. Seeing Qin Daoxian turning his attention to him, Qin Liangyu had a pleasing smile on his face. Director Qin, how is the mine now? Listening to Qin Daoxian talking about the mine, Qin Liangyi's smiling face collapsed. He said in a slightly complaining tone, Patriarch Zhishao, all the mines have stopped working now, and the workers in the mines have all gone home to rest. Oh, by the way, the copper mined in the mine is kept in the storage room. During this time, I have been personally responsible for guarding, to ensure that there are no problems. After hearing these words, Qin Daoxian nodded non-committally. This is Jianghu Island. All the people living on the island are from the Qin clan. In addition, only monks can use the copper ore. Ordinary people will naturally not steal the copper ore. However, after seeing that even though the copper mine is closed, Qin Liangyu is still sticking to the mine. This attitude is very satisfactory to Qin Daoxian. Thinking of this, his eyes softened a bit. Mr. Qin, you've worked hard for this time. Hearing this, Qin Liangyu said with a sincere expression. It's all for the family, I don't dare to praise the young patriarch. After pondering for a while, Qin Daoxian continued, well, I'll give you a new job. If this job is done, it will definitely be no worse than when you were the head of the copper mine in the future. Qin Daoxian saw what Qin Liangyu was thinking at a glance and said with a smile, I don't know what you think? Hearing that a new errand was handed over to him, Qin Liangyu almost jumped up with joy. He forcibly suppressed the excitement in his heart, and said in a trembling voice, Qin Liangyu is willing to go through fire and water for the family no matter what. You don't have to go through fire and water. Qin Daoxian waved his hand with a smile, and then his face became serious. I want you to select a group of 16 to 18-year-old males in your family, requiring literacy, smart and clever. You choose 15 people first and gather in the family's fire room tomorrow morning. As ordered. Qin Liangyu cupped his hands and said excitedly. Watching Qin Liangyu leave, Qin Daoxian looked at Qin Baiwang, who was waiting on the side, and said, let's go to the stone processing workshop first. Yes, young patriarch. Chongqing County, Stone Processing Workshop. As the only stone processing workshop in Chongqing County, there are 3 types of stone bricks produced here. They are red stone bricks, white stone bricks, and the best quality bluestone bricks. Along the way, Qin Baiwang, an old craftsman, introduced Qin Daoxian as he walked. This is the family stone workshop. Every household in Chongqing County produces stone bricks from here. This workshop is only about a few hundred square meters, and there are only a dozen craftsmen working. Although everyone is tired and sweaty, the efficiency is still appallingly low. Qin Baiwang continued to introduce, our stone materials here require quarriers to extract raw stones from the mountains, and then process them into finished bricks through workshops. With that said, Qin Baiwang picked up a processed blue brick from the basket next to the craftsman and handed it to Qin Daoxian. Young patriarch, please take a look. In front of you. This blue brick is about 7 inches long, 3 inches wide and 2 inches thick. This is the best stone brick the Qin family can make. Compared with the ancient times of the earth, the Qin clan of Jianghu Island does not seem to have mastered the method of firing adobe. Of course, this is also related to the fact that the various resources in the immortal world are much richer than the earth. There is no need for ordinary people to burn bricks at all, and all kinds of stone and wood are inexhaustible. It is also beautiful and practical, and burning bricks naturally looks very tasteless. Seeing the work efficiency of the group of craftsmen in front of him, Qin Daoxian finally knew why it took half a year to build a factory. It is not that the craftsmen who build the factory are slow, but the supply of raw materials is insufficient. After thinking about it, Qin Daoxian turned his head and asked, can the raw materials from the quarry be supplied? After hearing this, Qin Baiwang didn't react for a while. After a while, he nodded sharply, yes. The work in the quarry is all brute force work, so it's easy to find someone. Finally heard good news. Qin Daoxian instructed, give you half a day, you go to Qinji and let him organize the tribe to transport all the raw stones from the quarry back. Although he didn't know what medicine Qin Daoxian sold in the gourd, Qin Beiwang did not dare to disobey the young patriarch who had just taken control of the family. So, Qin Ji, who was organizing an investigation of the family's population, received an order from Qin Daoxian. Facing Qin Daoxuan's order, Qin Ji did not dare to neglect. Immediately, they organized manpower to transport raw stones to the quarry. Fortunately, most of the mortals on Jianghu Island were warriors of the mortal realm. In one afternoon, more than 3,000 square raw stones were transported back to the courtyard of the stone processing workshop by the Qin clan. Afternoon. Outside the courtyard of the stone processing workshop was full of onlookers. They were all temporary workers organized by Qin Ji to transport the stones. No one knew what the young patriarch was going to do. In the courtyard, Qin Daoxian looked at the mountains of blue stone in front of him, sighed in his heart, and wanted to be a coolie again. He slightly took a sip of Dantian True Qi, and the cyan stone was suspended in midair under the control of True Qi. Immediately after, the red shadow flying sword flew out of the storage bag, and the flying sword shone with aura. Brush brush. Sword lights shone in the courtyard of the stone processing workshop. Blink of an eye. The huge bluestone stone with a square meter was cut into small bricks by Fei Jian. This? Outside the courtyard, when the Qin clan saw this scene, they all had a ghostly expression on their faces. Although they knew that the monks were powerful, the fairy-like scene in front of them was beyond the limit of their imagination. Just as Qin Daoxian Fei Jian cut, the blue stone in the courtyard became less and less, and the blue bricks piled up more and more. Only one afternoon's work. The 3,000 square stones were all cut into blue bricks of good quality by Qin Daoxian by himself. Gollum. Qin Beiwang stood in the yard and swallowed unconsciously. He now finally knows why the patriarch of the Qin clan can only be a monk, not a mortal. With so many stones, even if all the masons in the Qin family work overtime, it will take at least several months to process all the stones into bricks. But now, it has only been 3 hours since the full calculation, and all the stones have been processed by the young patriarch alone. This kind of power of ghosts and gods can't be compared by mortals. Thinking of this, Qin Beiwang became more and more in awe of Qin Daoxian, the young patriarch. Chapter 32. Call. After a busy afternoon, Qin Daoxian felt a burst of satisfaction when he saw the neatly stacked bluestone bricks in front of him. He turned around, looked at Qin Beiwang next to him and said, "Are you enough bricks to build the factory now?" "Enough. Enough, absolutely enough." Qin Beiwang nodded stiffly. "Then I ask you Wuxia to build the factory within a month. Can you complete this task?" "Can." Qin Beiwang glanced at Qin Daoxian for fear that the other party would not believe him. He emphasized, "It's definitely possible." "That's good." Qin Daoxian nodded with satisfaction, and when he used the wind-controlling technique, he walked away in front of everyone. Before leaving, his voice sounded in Qin Beiwang's ear, "Don't forget to draw a map of Jianghu Island." "Yes, young patriarch." Qin Beiwang bowed deeply and said. After a stick of incense, Qin Daoxian, who was riding in the wind, returned to his cave in the Copper Mountains. "This time I went to Guang'an for more than 2 months and the cave is still spotless." He knew that this was the result of the family sending someone to clean it every day. Enter the training room in the cave. After careful inspection of the spiritual eye, it was found that the spiritual eye was intact, and there was no phenomenon of spiritual exhaustion. Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. As twilight gradually fell, the night in the mountains was as cold as water, but Qin Daoxian turned a deaf ear. I saw him sitting cross-legged on the futon intently. In front of him is a brocade box and a jade bottle, which are the 2 treasures he got from Guang'an Prefecture to aid his cultivation, the water spirit beads and the qi-gathering pill. According to the records in the ancient books of the clan, qi-gathering pill can help cultivators to double the efficiency of refining spiritual qi, allowing the cultivator of the upper spiritual root to train at a speed comparable to that of the cultivator of the spiritual root in just 1 month. I don't know if it's true or not. Qin Daoxian gently played with the jade bottle in his hand, and then placed it in front of him. He then opened the brocade box again, and a water spirit ball the size of a marble appeared in front of him. Shui Lingzhu can purify spiritual energy so that monks can improve the speed of refining spiritual energy. What's more rare is that water spirit beads are not like medicine pills, they will not have erysipelas, and they can always help practice. Qin Daoxian glanced at the Shui Lingzhu and then at the jade bottle containing the qi-gathering pill and took a deep breath. I don't know how fast my cultivation speed will be if I use these 2 treasures to assist my cultivation at the same time. Ponder. Qin Daoxian opened the jade bottle, poured out a qi-gathering pill, threw it into his mouth and swallowed it. At the same time he opened the brocade box again, and guided the water spirit beads in the brocade box to absorb the aura emerging from the spiritual eyes. Then a purer aura was fed back by the water spirit beads. See, Qin Daoxian didn't dare to waste the pure spiritual energy in front of him, and immediately started the Guiyuan Gong, to absorb the pure spiritual energy exhaled by the water spirit beads. With this pure aura entering Qin Daoxian's body, immediately, every cell in his body cheered. The aura first enters the human Bodhis meridians from Tianling Bai Hui, and then runs through the meridians of the whole body, slowly refining the aura, converting it into true qi and storing it in the dantian. Qin Daoxian has been carrying out such refining steps for more than 5 years. Qin Daoxian is confident that even if it is not consciously controlled, he can use his instinct to refine spiritual energy. But today Qin Daoxian felt different. The speed of cultivation is really fast. If Qin Daoxian's usual speed of refining spiritual energy is 1 point, then the speed of refining spiritual energy today is a full 5 points. He didn't exaggerate in the slightest, the speed was just that fast. So much so that he faintly felt that the spiritual energy provided by the spiritual eye was somewhat insufficient. How come so fast? After running for a big week, Qin Daoxian opened his eyes and said with a shocked expression, "No wonder the cultivators are so fascinated by the elixir, and they attach more importance to the elixir than the magic weapon. If it were me I would choose that too." No wonder he was shocked, the speed of cultivation was too fast. Compared with before, the results of his cultivation in the past 2 hours were on par with the usual 2 or 3 days of hard cultivation, and his cultivation speed was 4 or 5 times faster. Which monk in the world can resist this temptation? Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian did not dare to waste time, and continued to close his eyes to refine his spiritual energy. The next day, after feeling that the meridians began to ache, Qin Daoxian ended his day of practice. "Last night I actually practiced for an hour longer than before." After opening his eyes, Qin Daoxian counted the time with his fingers and said silently, "You must know that cultivators do not have to eat, drink or sleep every day. The more time they spend in the practice the better. For monks, the daily practice time should be appropriate. The so-called appropriate amount of practice time depends on the physique of different monks. For example, Qin Daoxian, the best time for his daily practice is about 4 hours, that is, 8 hours. About as long as mortals sleep at night. Therefore, Qin Daoxian usually chooses to practice at night. If this time is exceeded, there may not be any problems in the short term, but in the long run, it will cause irreversible damage to the cultivator's physical meridians, making the road dusty. And last night, Qin Daoxian obviously exceeded the normal cultivation time. However, the reason why this happened was because he practiced so much last night that he neglected the practice time. Of course, the results of such selfless cultivation are also gratifying. Qin Daoxian found that at this cultivation speed, he would be able to break through to the 4th level of qi refining in at most half a year. After breaking through to the 4th level of qi refining, Qin Daoxian's strength must have a qualitative leap. At least his envoy Fuxuajin will no longer be like the initial stage of qi refining, where he can only use a few swords, and his true qi will not be enough, and he will be slaughtered by others. He estimated that after breaking through to the 4th level of qi refining, thanks to the growth of infuriating energy and the skyrocketing spiritual awareness, he can at least kill the enemy with more than 10 swords before running out of infuriating energy. People are happy when they are happy. Qin Daoxian's cultivation went smoothly, his path was smooth, and the smiles on his face naturally increased. After half a column of incense, when Qin Daoxian flew to the family's old fire room with Yu Fengshu, he found that there were already a group of 16 or 17-year-old teenagers waiting on the jade square in the fire room. "See this group of teenagers who are the same age as me." Qin Daoxian looked at Qin Liangyu with a smile and said, "I'm sorry for making you wait for a long time." Hearing this apology, Qin Liangyu suddenly looked flattered and said, "Why did the young patriarch say this? It should be that we came earlier than the appointed time." Qin Daoxian had no intention of arguing with him on this topic, so he changed the topic and said, "Are these people the apprentices you hired?" "Young patriarch, yes." Qin Liangyu bowed. "These young men can read and are very clever, so they should be good enough to be used by the young patriarch." Although Qin Liangyu didn't know what Qin Daoxian's intention was to call these youngsters, but he knew that the time for Qin Liangyi's transfer had arrived. Chapter 33. Squeak. Pushing open the heavy bronze door of the fire room, Qin Daoxian turned around and said, "Come in." Hearing this, everyone filed in. As soon as they approached the ground fire room, everyone felt a heat wave blowing towards them. After a while, everyone was sweating profusely. Qin Daoxian glanced at the group of clansmen who were about the same age as him. They were basically the mortal realm cultivation base on the 4th and 5th floors of the day after tomorrow. Facing the scorching heat of the fire room, it was inevitable that it would be unbearable. Is this the family's fire room? Qin Liangyu glanced at the fire room, which was hundreds of square meters in size, and muttered. The fire room, as the stronghold of the Qin family on Jianghu Island, has always been closed to ordinary people. Except for Qin Daoxian and Qin Xianhe, the entire family is not qualified to set foot here. Now Qin Daoxian took them to this legendary place. How to keep everyone from getting excited. Qin Liangyu is a little better. After all, he used to be the head of the copper mine, and he has seen a little of the world. But the group of 16 or 17-year-olds he brought with him did not have such a good temperament. Despite everyone's repeated restraint, there were still bursts of whispering sounds. Glancing at everyone, Qin Daoxian walked straight to the silver-white melting furnace placed in the center of the fire room. Cough, cough. He coughed lightly, suppressing the voices of the crowd. Seeing that the scene was quiet, Qin Daoxian continued, "This is one of the most central places in the family, the fire room." Careful Qin Liangyu noticed Qin Daoxian's words. What? He suppressed his temper and continued to listen. The fire room is where the monks refine their instruments. Today, what I'm going to teach you is how to use this Rongling furnace to assist the monks in refining the instruments. What is the magic weapon? Is it a baby used by immortals? I don't know, Qin Yunxing, do you know? The young man named Qin Yunxing was the eldest among the crowd, already 18 years old. Judging from its appearance, it is somewhat similar to Qin Liangyu, the former head of the copper mine who was standing in front of everyone. Hearing the clan's question, Qin Yunxing pondered for a moment and said, "The magic weapon is the weapon used by the immortals. Did you hear what the young patriarch did in the stone processing workshop yesterday? At that time, the young patriarch used the magic weapon." Ah, so that fairy sword is a magic weapon. Brother Yunxing, you are amazing, you know a lot. Listening to the voices of discussion from the crowd, Qin Daoxian hadn't spoken yet, but Qin Liangji's face sank. What are you arguing about? Why don't you listen carefully? And you, Qin Yunxing, talk again and see how I'll clean up your kid when I go back. Qin Liangyu reprimanded in a low voice. Seeing this scene, Qin Daoxian didn't care much. After all, he was a young man. If every young man in his clan was as mature as him, it would be abnormal. Under Qin Liangji's reprimand, the scene returned to quiet again. Seeing that everyone was quiet, Qin Daoxian began to tell everyone the operation principle of the Rongling furnace. Fortunately, Qin Liangyu selected all talented and intelligent young people, and the principle of Rongling furnace was quickly understood by everyone. As soon as Qin Daoxian finished explaining the principle of Rongling furnace, he saw a young man raise his hand. Do you have any question? He pointed at the boy who raised his hand. Less. Young patriarch, although he was ready to repeat it again and again, Qin Yunxing still felt a huge pressure when he was asked by the young patriarch. Under this pressure, Qin Yunxing took a deep breath and said, "What you mean just now is that we need to feed the spiritual ore from this feeding port of the furnace, and then control and adjust the temperature in the furnace through the operating rod, so as to achieve is it to refine spiritual ore? You understand it well." Qin Daoxian nodded. In that case, only 2 people at most can operate this melting furnace. Why do we need so many of us now? This sentence can be regarded as asking the voice of all the teenagers present. Not only are they honored to be able to work under the young patriarch, but everyone also bears the expectations of the elders in the family. If they are eliminated in less than a day, they will not be able to raise their heads in the clan after returning. Seeing everyone like this, Qin Daoxian knew everyone's worries and comforted, "Don't worry, Rongling stoves are far more than this one, and there will only be more and more Rongling stoves in the family in the future." But, Qin Daoxian changed his words, "Don't think that if there are too many melting furnaces you will be able to perfunctory things. If you don't perform well, you will still be eliminated." Hearing this warning, everyone's originally relaxed mood became tense again. Seeing everyone regain their concentration, Qin Daoxian continued, "Some of you said just now that it only takes 2 people at most to operate a melting furnace. He is basically right." He paused. A melting furnace will be equipped with 2 workers, a stuffer and a furnace operator. The filler is responsible for screening, weighing and proportioning the spiritual ore, and then putting it into the feeding port. The furnace operator is responsible for controlling the temperature of the melting furnace, refining the spiritual ore and transferring the refined products from the furnace in time. Everyone can see from the operation process that the work of the filler is relatively simple, and any person can basically be competent, but it is the furnace operator that is difficult. The furnace operator not only needs to adjust the temperature of the melting furnace according to the time at any time, but also needs to take out the finished materials in the furnace at the right time, otherwise the spirit ore will become waste after being smelted in the furnace for a long time. After listening to Qin Daoxuan's narration, everyone immediately understood the importance of furnace operators. Not surprisingly, no one wanted to be a stuffer, and everyone went to work as a furnace worker, especially after hearing that the monthly salary of a furnace worker was 3 taels of silver, twice that of a stuffer. Seeing everyone eager to try, Qin Daoxian smiled and said, "Don't be in a hurry to be happy. Let's watch me operate the Rongling furnace. These 3 taels of silver are not so easy to get." After finishing speaking, Qin Daoxian took out 2 kinds of spiritual ores, black iron and red copper ore, which were used to refine the red shadow flying sword from the storage bag. After skillfully putting the 2 well-matched spirit ores into the furnace, Qin Daoxian operated the melting spirit furnace. 15 teenagers formed a group and asked Qin Daoxian questions from time to time. Learning time is fast. In a blink of an eye. 4 hours passed. As a monk, Qin Daoxian doesn't feel hungry, but these teenagers are different. They are all mortals and need to eat. Although their hearts were hot, they were so hungry that their chests and backs were long ago. Seeing that learning is over, Chen Liangyu, who was temporarily serving as a logistics staff, brought a lunch box for everyone and said softly, "Young patriarch, let everyone have a meal and then learn?" Ah. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian reacted, "Everyone has been studying for a day." Immediately he said apologetically, "I was negligent. Everyone eats first, and after eating I will continue to tell you about the technique of using the joystick to control the temperature." When the boys heard this, their eyes lit up and nodded hastily. Chapter 34. Next. A whole week. Qin Daoxian spent almost all of his time in the fire room, teaching the 15 teenagers the skills of controlling the melting furnace. Hard work pays off. Under Qin Daoxuan's careful teaching and many young people's dedicated study, the results of this week are very gratifying, and some young people have been able to independently extract spiritual or materials. In the fire room, the heat wave hits people. A group of sweaty teenagers, topless, surrounded the Rongling stove, watching another teenager control the Rongling stove. Only different from a week ago. The boy who controlled the Rongling furnace this time was not Qin Daoxian, but the boy named Chen Yunxing. I saw Chen Yunxing staring intently at the Rongling furnace, turning his head from time to glance at the hourglass used for timing. Different from when the monks use the melting furnace, they can also use the consciousness to observe the state of the materials in the furnace, so as to adjust the temperature in time. When mortals use the Rongling furnace, they can only take timed and quantitative methods to adjust the temperature in the furnace in strict accordance with the production steps, so that the spiritual ore will not be smelted and discarded. Although he had done a lot of preparation in his mind, Chen Yunxing felt a lot of pressure when he got started. He glanced at Qin Daoxian not far away, and found that the other party pursed his lips and said nothing, without any intention of pointing. Seeing this, Chen Yunxing gritted his teeth, his heart was stunned, and he operated directly according to the operation manual given by Qin Daoxian, and stopped thinking about it. Minutes passed by. As the Rongling furnace ran smoothly as usual, Chen Yunxing's heart gradually eased. Seeing that the other party was no longer nervous, the corner of Qin Daoxuan's mouth slightly raised an arc. He had originally planned to fail Chen Yunxing's refinement, but he did not expect that the other party would succeed the first time. Using the melting furnace to extract spiritual ore is not an easy task for mortals without spiritual consciousness. It is absolutely necessary to operate in accordance with the specifications in the operation manual, and there can be no single error. Obviously, Chen Yunxing did it. Through the spirit melting furnace, Qin Daoxian observed that a group of crimson liquids fused together. After the aura on the red liquid mass was completely fused, the spiritual pressure in the furnace suddenly soared, and the melting furnace was affected by the spiritual pressure, and there was a sudden screeching sound. Wow! Hearing this familiar chirping sound, Qin Yunxing felt ecstatic in his heart. He knew that he had succeeded. I saw that he immediately controlled the operating lever, and under the action of the floating formation, the red liquid mass was transferred out of the melting furnace. watching the red liquid mass fly out from the discharge port of the Rongling furnace. Chen Daoxian smiled slightly, and immediately ran his true qi to take over the red liquid mass, followed by shaping and melting it. An hour later, a bright red flying sword appeared in front of everyone. It was the first-order low-grade flying sword recorded in the family's weapon refining heritage, the Red Shadow Flying Sword. Oh, great! Success! Ah! Seeing this scene, all the teenagers at the scene danced and burst into violent cheers. And Qin Yunxing, who successfully operated the Rongling furnace, was surrounded by them like a hero. Even Qin Liangyu, who had been listening to the class with them for a week, had a smile on his serious face at the moment. When his eyes turned to Qin Yunxing, there was a hint of pride in his eyes. Qin Daoxian seemed to notice Qin Liangyi's eyes, and smiled and nodded at him. Seeing the affirmative eyes of the young patriarch, Qin Liangyu was even more excited. Down these 7 days, Qin Liangyu clearly knew that compared with the family's former copper mine, this magical instrument factory that was about to be built was many times more important. It can even be said that this magic weapon factory will be the lifeblood of the Qin family on Jianghu Island in the future. During this period of time he handled logistics, arranged time for everyone to study and eat, and his busy performance was all watched by Qin Daoxian. If nothing else, he is likely to be the factory manager of this magical instrument factory in the future. Qin Liangyu thought about it. The young patriarch seemed to use this word. While he was dreaming, Qin Daoxian's voice rang in everyone's ears. It's done very well. It seems that you have worked very hard during this period of time and lived up to the expectations of my family and me. Qin Daoxian patted Qin Yunxing on the shoulder and praised. After getting along for this period of time, everyone's attitude towards Qin Daoxian has changed from the original reverence to the current respect. In the eyes of everyone, Qin Daoxian not only possesses unimaginable power, but is also a man of profound knowledge. It seems that there is no reason in this world that he does not understand. During this period of time, no matter what kind of question everyone raised, it seemed that they could find the correct answer in Qin Daoxian, which made everyone identify with the air of the patriarch from the bottom of their hearts. Praised Qin Yunxing. He then appointed Qin Yunxing as the teacher of the 15 teenagers and continued to teach everyone how to control the Rongling furnace. And he took a break from the heavy teaching task. After explaining everyone, Qin Daoxian turned to look at Qin Liangyu and said, "Mr. Qin, I have something to look for you." When Qin Liangyu heard this, he seemed to hear Xianle and his bones were brittle. He hurriedly lowered his head and said, "Yes, young patriarch." The two walked out of the fire room one after the other. Qin Daoxian used the wind-fighting technique, rolled up the figures of him and Qin Liangyu, and flew down the mountain. This was Qin Liangyi's first time flying in the sky and he was a little panicked for a while. But after all, he is a warrior of the 7th floor of the innate, and he quickly adjusted his mentality and stood beside Qin Daoxian obediently. Seeing his appearance, Qin Daoxian nodded with satisfaction and said, "Mr. Qin, I have seen your performance during this period of time, and now, on behalf of the family, I will appoint you as the first magic weapon factory. Your main task in the future is to adjust the production time of the factory's Rongling furnace according to my working hours, and increase the factory's output of magical instruments." "Yes." Liangyu promises to complete the task. Qin Liangyu said excitedly. During this period of time, he learned from behind Qin Daoxian so that he understood what Qin Daoxian meant by adjusting the production time of the Rongling furnace. The Rongling furnace produces semi-finished red liquid mass, which generally takes 4 hours. In other words, before Qin Daoxian began to enter the factory, he would have to advance 4 hours earlier, and arrange for a Rongling furnace to enter the working state every hour. Only in this way can Qin Daoxian continuously refine the Red Shadow Flying Sword. According to the efficiency of refining a flying sword in 1 hour, Qin Daoxian can refine at most 4 to 5 flying swords a day without delaying the management of family affairs and affecting his own cultivation. Of course, this is only theoretical data. The specific situation will not be known until the instrument factory is completed and put into actual production. But no matter what, the production efficiency under this production method is dozens of times faster than that of traditional craftsmanship. In the next days, more and more teenagers have mastered the method of controlling the melting furnace, and they have transformed from ordinary apprentices to qualified furnace operators. Of course, in this process, it is inevitable that the spirit ore will be refined and discarded. It is even foreseeable that in the future, after the magic weapon factory enters the production process, there will be cases where the furnace operator will refine the spiritual ore to waste. But these losses are completely negligible for the Chen family, who has made the leap from handmade to machine-made. A month later, just when Qin Daoxian refined the 5th Rongling furnace, another good news came to his ears. The factory building of the family magic tool factory, completed. Chapter 35. The industrial zone planned by Qin Daoxian is located in the vast plain area east of Chongqing County. From here, if you continue to the east, you can reach the only port on Jianghu Island. The reason why Qin Daoxian placed the industrial zone here is not only to make land planning in advance for the expansion of the industrial zone in the future, but also to facilitate the import and export of magical instruments and spiritual or raw materials. The only inconvenience is that this is a suburb outside Chongqing County, surrounded by plain wasteland. Except for a dilapidated official road leading directly to Chongqing County, there are no other buildings. Obviously, the environment here is not very friendly to the workers of the magic tool factory who are about to work here. However, this kind of problem cannot be completely solved even in the modern Earth, let alone the Qin family in Jianghu Island, where the conditions are even worse. To solve these problems, the premise is to do a good job in the construction of various infrastructures. For example, in addition to factories, the industrial zone also needs to build staff dormitories, medical halls, and various supporting shopping, entertainment, and other consumer places. After all, people are not machines. Even if the Qin clan can endure hardship, Qin Daoxian does not want to squeeze them too much. Because he knows that everyone may be able to endure the painful environment when the conditions are difficult, but when the family develops and grows, Qin Daoxian will continue to squeeze, which will inevitably make the people of the Qin clan unhappy. Although ordinary mortals dare not resist head-on in the face of the powerful power of monks, a passive saboteur cannot escape. Therefore, Qin Daoxian must consider the various welfare benefits of the workers in the magic tool factory in advance, so as to avoid them being ineffective in the production process and causing unnecessary losses to the family. As soon as Qin Daoxian learned that the magical instrument factory was completed, he rushed over by Yu Fengfei. When he arrived at the scene, everyone was already waiting in the factory. Qin Daoxian stood out of thin air, looking down from a height. The area of the factory below was about 1,000 square meters, which was much more spacious than the family's old fire room. Lowering his body in front of the crowd, Qin Daoxian looked at Qin Beiwang with a tired face and said, "Qin Yekeo, thank you for your hard work." Hearing this compliment, Qin Beiwang immediately showed an expression of inexplicable excitement and cupped his hands. This old man is already 62 this year, and most of his body is buried in the soil. I didn't expect to be able to build this wonder for the family. The old man is happy and it is too late. Where will he feel hard? Hearing these words from the bottom of his heart, Qin Daoxian nodded. However, the capable ones will work hard, and you will not be able to relax as Chow Chow. In addition to the factory building, there are also the staff's dormitory area, various buildings in the factory area, and Chongping district. The roads connecting the county to the industrial area and the port are all waiting for you as Chow to complete. Really? When Qin Beiwang heard this, his old face suddenly collapsed. Immediately afterwards, his hunched body was full of fighting spirit again, and he said, "As long as the family doesn't dislike the old man's use of bones, the old man is willing to die of exhaustion in his position." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but respect the old man in front of him. In the Qin family on Jianghu Island, even ordinary mortals are all thinking about developing and growing the family. Such a family, why not be strong? After encouraging everyone, Qin Daoxian stepped into the factory building under the stars of a group of people. The internal structure of the factory building and the design drawings are generally the same. There are a total of 10 separate compartments, each of which is about 100 square meters. All the compartments are connected to each other, which is convenient for Qin Daoxian to go from the previous workshop to the next one. After some inspection, Qin Daoxian found that the Rongling furnace was about to be installed now. As for the formation that guides the fire pulse, that is, the core formation for the construction of the earth fire chamber, Qin Daoxian had already completed the layout shortly after the construction of the outer frame of the factory building. Therefore, after everyone entered the factory building, they felt a heat wave similar to the ground fire room hitting them. Fortunately, both Qin Liangyu and the others and Qin Beiwang and his party have become accustomed to this kind of environment, and no one complained about being tired. After visiting the factory, Qin Daoxian nodded with satisfaction. Very good. Now I announce that the first phase of the Chen's artifact factory is officially completed. After speaking, he took the lead in applauding. Although they didn't know what Qin Daoxian's action meant, everyone still imitated and applauded. Seeing everyone's unfamiliar actions, Chen Daoxian sighed in his heart. Shaking his head, he threw the ridiculous thoughts out of his mind. Chen Liangyu, who was on the side, came over at this moment and asked in a low voice, "Young patriarch, what should we name our magic tool factory? It's not like it's called Chen's Magic Tool Workshop, right?" Hearing this, Chen Daoxian glanced at him, pondered for a moment and said, "Let's call it the Hongyin Feijian Factory. Our factory will only produce one kind of magic weapon for a long time, and that is the Feijian." For the Red Shadow Feijian, not only Chen Liangyu, but also many apprentices who followed Chen Daoxian to learn to control the Rongling furnace have already seen the refining of the Red Shadow Feijian many times. Although everyone is immortal and can't understand the formation inscription and various refining techniques, everyone is still very familiar with the red flying sword itself. Therefore, for Chen Daoxian to give the magic tool factory such a name, everyone thinks it is quite in line with the products to be produced. The factory building is completed. The next step is to install the Rongling furnace. This work can only be done by Chen Daoxian. After all, the Rongling furnace is about a zhang long in diameter and weighs dozens of tons. It is difficult for even a congenital warrior to move it. Not to mention moving it from the fire room in the Copper Mountains. After all, these two places are considered a straight line distance, at least tens of kilometers away. Took a day's work. Chen Daoxian held the Rongling furnace with his infuriating energy, and traveled to and from the fire room and the magic weapon factory 5 times, and finally placed all the Rongling furnaces in each production workshop. Next, it is to prepare the raw materials of spiritual ore and enter the long-awaited production link. Chen Daoxian purchased a total of 6,721 spirit stones from Guang'an Prefecture, including the arrangement of the ground fire room formation. Among them, 3,000 spirit stones were spent on the arrangement of the formation materials for guiding the fire veins, and the remaining 3,721 spirit stones were spent on the purchase of spirit ore. Since Chen Daoxian's main purpose to refine this time is the red shadow flying sword in the family heritage, he bought a full 1,200 kilograms or 0.6 tons of the red copper ore alone. Compared with the tens of thousands of tons and hundreds of thousands of tons of metal ore in the previous life, 0.6 tons of copper ore sounds like a family. But for the Qin family on Jianghu Island, this is the most spiritual ore that can be bought by emptying the family. In addition to the red copper ore, the remaining 121 spirit stones were used to buy cheap black iron ore. As an auxiliary material for refining the red shadow flying sword, Chen Daoxian also bought a full 121 kilograms. According to Chen Daoxian's experience in refining the red shadow flying sword, to refine a mouthful of the red shadow Feijian, it takes 10 kilograms of red copper ore and 1 kilogram of black iron ore, and the raw material cost is about 31 spirit stones. And the price of a first-order low-grade flying sword in Guang'an Prefecture hovered around 50 spirit stones. At first glance, the profits don't seem too high. But don't forget, the magic tools sold in the Guang'an House Sangxiafang City are all second-hand goods that have been eliminated by the children of the big clan. They are all defective products with damaged aura and a short service life. If there is a brand new flying sword with good quality, the price is definitely more than 50 spirit stones. Chen Daoxian estimated that the price would have to increase by about 50%, and it may well be worthless. In this way, the profit has more than doubled. The next day, when Chen Daoxian arrived at the Hongyin Feijian factory again, in less than half a column of incense, a cloud of red liquid had flowed out of the discharge port of the first Rongling furnace. Consciousness sweeps away. The other 4 workshops are refining or are about to prepare spiritual ore. Seeing the scene in front of him, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but think of the assembly line in his previous life. Although the assembly line of the Hongyin artifact factory was a bit slow, it was more than dozens of times faster than ordinary artifact refiners. Holding back his excitement, Chen Daoxian walked into the first refining workshop. Chapter 36. Shape, melt and repeat. So, 5 hours passed. Call. Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Chen Daoxian only felt relieved. He has been refining tools for so long, and he has never been as happy as today. He found that when he replaced the most complicated and labor-intensive stage of refining materials in the refining tool with the melting furnace, the refining tool actually became extremely easy. It's like a strong man who originally carried several hundred kilograms of heavy goods unloaded 90% of his burden, and suddenly felt like walking like a fly. Normally, Even if Qin Daoxian had the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, he would still feel exhausted every time after refining the magic weapon, and it would take at least a few days to recover. Not to mention ordinary refiners. As far as Qin Daoxian knew, even if a first-order high-grade artifact refiner wanted to refine a first-grade low-grade magic weapon, the fastest speed could only make one piece in 7 days. It's not that ordinary craftsmen really need 7 days to make a magic weapon, but after 3 days and 3 nights of continuous crafting, craftsmen need to meditate to restore their true qi and consciousness. It is good to say that infuriating medicines are more common after all, but spiritual consciousness is different. Every medicine that restores spiritual consciousness is expensive, and if you are unlucky you will not be able to buy them. So in general, it's not bad that an ordinary artifact refiner can refine a first-order low-grade magic weapon in 7 days. Moreover, the frequent refining of the artifact by the artifact master will inevitably delay his own cultivation. For monks, the biggest pain is to delay their own practice. Therefore, the immortal clan and sect in the immortal cultivation world can only use auxiliary treasures such as medicinal pills to make up for the training time delayed by the refining master. This is another huge expense. This is also the reason why the Xiuxian family and the sect have the ability to train more refiners, but they often only train refiners who meet their own needs, and then do not continue to train them. Because wanting to make money by refining low-level magic tools by an artifact refiner is simply an unrealistic thing. The profit of low-level magic tools is inherently low, and it takes a lot of resources to train a craftsman, and the consumption of craftsmanship is huge. Therefore, no cultivation force is willing to do this. The consumption here refers not only to the consumption of raw materials such as spiritual ore, but also to invisible consumption, such as the consumption of medicinal herbs for the refiner to restore his true energy and assist his practice. It is almost impossible for a loose cultivator to become an alchemist or an alchemist. First of all, there is no inheritance, and secondly, there is no one to teach, and the most important thing is that the poor scattered practitioners can't even handle the spiritual energy of cultivation, and there is no money left to play such a high-level skill as weapon refining. It is much more reliable for them to learn to be a spiritual planter than this. At least learning to be a spiritual planter will not consume such a large amount of resources. Therefore, this is also the reason why the majority of loose cultivators lack magical tools and have to use other people to eliminate them. However, this situation, it was completely smashed by the cross-generational product of the Rongling furnace. Today only 5 hours. The newly built Hongyin Feijian factory produced 5 Fijians. That's right, everyone is in a better state than Qin Daoxian expected. So many people work on average for 4 hours each, and there is not a single worker who makes a mistake. It was a good start for Hongyin Feijian factory, which produced 5 Feijian in 1 day. Compared to a common weapon refiner refining a magic weapon in 7 days, Qin Daoxian's production efficiency is exactly 35 times that of the other side. This is the power of industrial water production. Qin Daoxian knew that his current achievements were not even compared to the completely intelligent and automated factories in his previous life, but in this world where alchemy relies entirely on hands and alchemy relies entirely on fire. He is already the world's top productivity representative. Although the instruments produced by their instrument factory are of relatively low grade, and the varieties are very simple. But as far as the current results are concerned, he firmly believes that the direction of development he has chosen is completely correct. Checked all the red shadow flying swords and found that there was no problem. Qin Daoxian's face was full of smiles. Inside the factory. For a whole day, Qin Liangyu solved logistical problems and work schedules and other sundries for everyone almost non-stop. It can be said that Qin Daoxian can cooperate so well with everyone today, and the factory production is so smooth, Qin Liangyu has contributed greatly. Otherwise, no matter which link has a problem, it will delay the entire assembly line, thereby affecting production. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Qin Liangyu approached Qin Daoxian and said, "Young patriarch, you have worked hard." Seeing that the young patriarch personally fought on the front line of production for the development of the clan, Qin Liangyu sincerely admired it. Of course, Qin Daoxian also didn't want to enter the factory after crossing once, even though the factory belonged to the family, and the family was under his control. But now that you're the boss who wants to work part-time, Qin Daoxian personally went to the front line. That was no way. Who called the entire Qin family to be the only one refining master. Seeing Qin Liangyu sweating profusely, Qin Daoxian shook his head and said with a smile, "It's not hard work. By the way, how are the preparations for the refining equipment tomorrow?" Qin Daoxian asked casually. "It's all ready, just." After finishing speaking, Qin Liangyu looked like he was hesitant to speak again. If you have something to say it directly, don't hesitate. Qin Daoxian frowned, slightly dissatisfied. Hearing this, Qin Liangyu sighed and said, "Young Patriarch, now we only have more than 1,800 caddies of red copper ore in our factory warehouse. According to today's consumption, it will be completely consumed in more than a month at most." Saying that, he secretly raised his head and glanced at Qin Daoxian, and seeing that there was no strange color on his face, he felt a little relieved. Ugh, Qin Daoxian sighed, this is also impossible. The family only stores more than 600 caddies of copper ore, and the spirit stone in our clan library is only enough to buy 1,200 caddies of copper ore, so there is a shortage of raw materials. Speaking of this, Qin Daoxian frowned. It is a pity that Guang'an Prefecture does not have a financial loan business, otherwise he would have to borrow a lot of money to put it into production. But this is also a good thing. It proves that our products will be sold to Guang'an in 1 month. When the funds are returned, we will definitely be able to further expand production. After studying under Qin Daoxian for a month, Qin Liangyu not only has a strong immunity to some new terms that he occasionally pops up, but can also roughly guess the meaning of these terms. It has to be said that human adaptability is terrifying. Forget it, let's not talk about that. Qin Daoxian waved his hand. Have you recorded today's raw material consumption and Feijin output? Young Patriarch, all the subordinates have written it down. Ah, that's good. Qin Daoxian nodded with satisfaction. Our stall is still relatively small now, but one day the stall will get bigger and bigger. You have to learn to consume all the raw materials, the number of qualified products, the number of waste refining products and other data, all are recorded in detail for future reference. Remember, this matter concerns the interests of the family and must not be taken lightly. Yes, the subordinates will definitely record all the accounts of the factory, and there will be no omissions. Qin Liangyu assured. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian was slightly relieved. Qin Liangyu, who has been in charge of the copper mine for so many years, has never made a mistake. Qin Daoxian is more at ease when he does things. Seeing the smile on Qin Daoxian's face, Qin Liangyu bowed slightly and said, "Young Patriarch, today is a happy day for our factory to start construction. I will prepare a banquet in the mansion, and I also invite the young Patriarch to appreciate the light." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian glanced at the other party, nodded and said, "Then it's annoying. Don't dare to dare, the young Patriarch can visit the cold house, it really makes the cold house shine," Qin Liangyu said with a smile. Chapter 37, Chongping County. Now is Su Shi, which is equivalent to about 7 o'clock in the evening in the previous life. Unlike the Xianqing of Guang'an Prefecture, which is brightly lit all night, although Chongping County has not implemented a curfew at night, only a few large households have their lights on. Qin Liangji's family is one of them. As a luxury carriage slowly came to a stop in front of a big family, Qin Daoxian got off the carriage under the eyes of everyone. Qin House. Qin Daoxian raised his head, looked at the 2 big characters with dragons flying and phoenix dancing on the rather weathered plaque, nodded and praised, "Good calligraphy." Hearing Qin Daoxian's praise, Qin Liangji's face suddenly showed a proud look. "This is the plaque that my ancestor of the Qin family mentioned in his own hand and presented to my ancestor." Oh. Hearing that it was the handwriting of Qin Dengyuan, the ancestor of the Qin family, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but take a second glance. Squeak. Just as he was admiring the plaque, the door to the Qin residence was suddenly opened. A group of people filed out from the mansion and poured out together. Take a closer look. The leader was a woman in her late 40s, followed by the servants of the Qin family, including maids and servants. Seeing this scene, Qin Daoxian remained silent, wondering what he was thinking. But in the eyes of everyone, the young patriarch is an immortal, and it is only natural for immortals to be indifferent and superior. I saw the middle-aged woman at the head. Wei Yifu nodded and said, "The people's daughter Qin, I have met the young patriarch." As for the maids and servants behind her, they all knelt on the ground, buried their heads deeply on the ground and dared not look up. Seeing this scene, Qin Daoxian's face was a little unhappy. How shrewd Qin Liangyu is. Even knowing that Qin Daoxian must have misunderstood, he immediately stepped forward and explained softly, "Young patriarch, these maids and servants are not from my Qin clan, but slaves purchased by the old patriarch from Guang'an Mansion." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but think of those serfs with shackles on their feet and carrying grain at the Guang'an Mansion wharf. "You mean they are all slaves of Izumo?" "Exactly." Qin Liangyu nodded. As if thinking of something, Qin Daoxian asked, "In my Shuanghu Island, are there many servants like this?" "A lot." Chen Liangyu thought for a while. "Our Chen family has purchased 46 maids and 37 servants, and the total number is nearly 100. As far as I know, my Qin family has 3 or 4 such portals." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian nodded clearly. "No wonder I have so many fertile fields in Chen's family, and there are only 177 farmers in the farm, right?" Seeing Qin Daoxian pointing at the servant kneeling on the ground, Chen Liangyu smiled shyly. In his mind, it wasn't a big deal. Indeed, for the current Qin family, a little land acquisition is not a big deal. Even many Qin clan people are reluctant to cultivate the fields, because the family will give the Qin clan people a minimum living guarantee. That is to say, as long as you are from the Qin clan, even if you don't work, the clan will not let you starve to death on the street. This undoubtedly breeds the laziness of a small part of the Qin family. These drawbacks are all what Qin Daoxian is eager to reform. It's just that the investigation on the family's population, fields, and land has not been completely completed, and Qin Daoxian has been busy with the magic weapon factory for the past month. There is simply no way to manage these chores. But just because he's busy doesn't mean he doesn't care. As a traveler, Qin Daoxian knew in his heart how important a relatively fair distribution system was for a force. Land annexation, whether in ancient times on Earth or in this world of immortal cultivation, is a big cancer. The only difference from the Earth is that there are monks in the world of immortal cultivation, and monks rely on the vast group of mortals. Therefore, once the conflicts of mortals cannot be reconciled, the monks will act as this regulator, forcibly smashing the inherent interest groups of mortals, so that the mortals at the bottom can breathe. But Qin Daoxian did not intend to do so. Because the Qin family is too weak and he will soon develop the family in great strides. Before that, he will definitely cut off the various shortcomings of the family in advance. In other words, weed out the idea of unfair distribution. "Come on, let's go in. Young patriarch, please go first." Chen Liangyu heard the words and immediately made a gesture of please. A group of people quickly gave up a passage and let Qin Daoxian walk in front. When Qin Daoxian passed by, a young man trotted forward and shouted at the middle-aged woman with a face full of joy, "Mother!" When the middle-aged woman saw her son, her face was both joyful and distressed. She quickly took out the Shijuan handkerchief, wiped the sweat from Qin Yunsheng's forehead, and said with concern, "You are tired, you are sweating. What is this?" Qin Yunsheng said indifferently, "Hey, why didn't you see the second sister and third brother? They are in the backyard with your second and third mothers, and it is inconvenient for them to come out with distinguished guests today," the middle-aged woman said calmly. Qin Yunsheng is a young man, and he doesn't have the deep scheming of his biological mother. If you ask casually, you don't care. Seeing that Qin Yunsheng still wanted to talk nonsense, the middle-aged woman pushed him, gave him a look and said, "Don't hurry up and help your father entertain the young patriarch." "Oh." Only then did Qin Yunsheng react. He scratched his head and said with a smile, "Mother, then I'll go to help father entertain the young patriarch and I'll greet you later. Go quickly." After speaking, Qin Yunsheng stepped forward quickly and followed behind Qin Liangyu and Qin Daoxian like a follower. Accompanied by Qin Liangyu and his direct son Qin Yunsheng, the living room was full of laughter. Unconsciously, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but see that Qin Liangyu and his son became more pleasing to the eye. After everyone drank for about half an hour, Qin Daoxian glanced at the sky and said, "It's better. Let's go here today and we will continue to be busy with factory production tomorrow. Hangovers are not a good habit." Hearing this, Qin Liangyu was full of regret, but he still smiled and said, "What the young patriarch said. Bang? You bitch. You gave birth to a bitch and you dare to bully my daughter, I'll kill you bitch." "I didn't bully her, it was she who grabbed my little wooden man first and scolded me." "Bitch. How dare you talk back? You bastard, don't you care about your bastard?" Except for Qin Yunsheng's biological mother, everyone present here is either a warrior or a monk. Although the quarrel from the backyard was inaudible in the ears of Qin Yunsheng's biological mother, in the ears of Qin Liangyu, Qin Daoxian and others, it was no different from the quarrel in the ears. Qin Daoxian took a sip of his wine silently and did not speak. Seeing this, Qin Liangyi's face was extremely embarrassed, and his heart was even more angry. This wicked woman is so ignorant. Let's see how to clean up you later. Qin Liangyu cursed fiercely in his heart. I thought it was just a temporary backyard quarrel, but I didn't expect the insults to get louder and louder, so that Qin Yunsheng's biological mother, who had been unaware, also heard it. Young patriarch, this The family is unfortunate, it makes you laugh. Qin Lianjia's face was full of embarrassment. Qin Daoxian smiled slightly but did not reply. After a long while, he moved in his heart and said, let's go over and have a look together. Saying that, he stood up from the table. Just out of curiosity, he swept the backyard with his divine sense, but found something quite interesting. Chapter 38. Qin's Backyard. When Qin Daoxian and his party arrived, there was already a mess in the backyard of Qin's house. In front of you, an 8 or 9-year-old boy was embraced by a young woman in her 20s. The young woman's face was pale, and her pretty face with a little makeup was full of horror. But his hands tightly wrapped around the little boy's body, lest the wicked woman with claws would hurt the child. And the little boy in the young woman's arms looked at the wicked woman with fire-breathing eyes, trying to struggle, but was firmly held down by his mother. The scolding person, that is, the wicked woman, is not bad-looking, but it reveals a bitter and mean look. I saw her with one hand on her waist and one finger at the slumped young woman. All kinds of unpleasant words kept popping out of her mouth. What slave of Izumo, what a born slut, the child born is also a slut. Anyway, all kinds of ugly and heart-wrenching words were constantly scolded by her. He scolded to the point of excitement that even people in the backyard didn't know. Why don't you talk? Are you dumb? Like a victorious general, the wicked woman looked around her servants, who knew that the next person seemed to have seen some terrifying and inexplicable scene, and they all fell to their knees and called in unison, "Master, madam." Hearing this sentence, the wicked woman felt a chill down her spine and turned around in embarrassment, only to find that it was the eldest lady who was usually the most fearful and jealous, and the angry master. Old Lord. The wicked woman seemed to change her face in a show, and when she was about to change her snarky appearance to a lovable one, she said coquettishly, "Master, you have to decide for me, these two are bullying my family while I'm not paying attention." Tanger. You bullshit, I didn't, she was the one who robbed me of the little wooden man. The little boy in the young woman's arms was not convinced, and was about to plead, but his mother tightly covered his mouth. The little boy's eyes were burning with fire, but unfortunately his strength was too small to struggle against her mother at all. I had to stare at the wicked woman with cannibalistic eyes and complain to the wicked person first. Snapped. Who knew that Qin Liangyu, who was in a hurry, could not allow her to argue at all, and immediately slapped his second wife. Under this slap, the entire backyard of Qin Mansion was in chaos. The cry of the little girl and the howl of the wicked woman are endless. Enough. Qin Liangyu shouted and glared at the quarreling people. Intimidated by his power, everyone, including the little girl, dared not cry anymore. The wicked woman was even more unbearable, and she was so frightened that her face turned pale. Seeing that Qin Liangyu was in control of the scene, he bowed to Qin Daoxian and said, "Young Patriarch, this subordinate is really..." Young Patriarch. Hearing Qin Lianjia's name, everyone's expressions changed. And Qin Daoxian raised his hand to stop Qin Lianjia's apology. I saw him take a few steps forward, crouch down in front of the young woman and say, "Can I see this child?" Hearing this, the young woman instinctively hugged the child for a few minutes, but then thinking of the identity of this person, she couldn't help letting go of the child. The little boy broke away from his mother's delicate little hand, took a deep breath and said, "Mother, you are suffocating to death. Your name is Qin Yenshu, isn't it?" Hearing this, the little boy turned to look at Qin Daoxian and said vigilantly, "Who are you and what is my name? It's none of your business? Are you here to bully us too?" As he said that, he opened his small hand and stopped his mother behind him. "I'm here to help you." He shook his head. "Can you come over and let me see?" After hearing this, the little boy looked at his mother with questioning eyes, and after getting a positive response, he came over reluctantly. "What you up to?" Qin Daoxian smiled slightly but did not speak. Directly caressed the top of the little boy's head with his jade-like right hand. Moment. As Qin Daoxian's dantian infuriated, a ray of light covered the top of the little boy's head. This ray of sunshine is particularly bright at night. Even if it is far away, everyone feels a little dazzling. This? Seeing this glow, Qin Liangyu suddenly remembered the records of the ancient books in the clan. Xiaoguang covered the top, immortal pose. Qin Liangyu never imagined that his son had the appearance of an immortal, a seed of immortality. But then thinking of something, Qin Lianjia's face turned pale again. Really? After Qin Daoxian checked Qin Nianka's aptitude for spiritual roots, he turned to look at Qin Liangyu and the wicked woman who was slapped in the face by him and said, Are you guilty? Although the wicked woman showed off her might in front of the little boy's mother, she didn't dare to argue in the face of the young patriarch, who was more terrifying than her husband, and immediately fell to her knees and did not dare to speak. Qin Liangyu. Seeing that the wicked woman did not speak, Qin Daoxian turned to Qin Liangyu and said, "Subordinates are here." Qin Liangyu immediately knelt down and lowered his head. What is Article 3 of the Qin clan rules? When Qin Liangyu heard this sentence, before Qin Liangyu spoke, the wicked woman on the side fell to the ground in fright. Qin Liangyu pursed his lips. Suddenly he stood up abruptly, kicked his second wife with one foot and scolded, "You slut, I told you to bully people if you don't have to and make the house uneasy, slut." Qin Liangyu beat and scolded until the other party hugged his legs and begged for mercy. Seeing her like this, Qin Liangji's heart softened, but then he became ruthless and continued to beat and scold. "Enough." Qin Daoxian said, "Qin Liangyu, let me ask you again, what is the third rule of the Qin clan?" Hearing this, Qin Liangyu slumped to the ground like a deflated ball. His face was ashen as he said, "Anyone of the Qin clan who insults the clan for no reason shall be sentenced to 2 years of hard labor, and whoever insults a mortal with spiritual roots for no reason is a crime. It's crime." "What? Shut up." Saying the last 2 words seemed to exhaust all the strength of Qin Liangji's body. He looked at Qin Daoxian with despair, hoping that he could open up. But Qin Liangyu knew in his heart that as long as a qualified patriarch would definitely implement the clan rules. He always thought that Qin Daoxian was a qualified patriarch. "Really?" Qin Daoxian pointed at the wicked woman, looked at the little boy and said, "Tell me, did she bully you?" The little boy was about to speak but was stopped by his mother. I saw the young woman desperately shook her head at the little boy and softly pleaded, "Chew or don't." The little boy clenched his teeth, looked at his mother for a while, and the wicked woman with a desperate face for a while, and took a deep breath and said, "She didn't bully me, I was just playing with my sister." Hearing this, the wicked woman only felt that her soul had finally returned to her body, and she fell to the ground. Hurt. Everyone present breathed a sigh of relief. Just when everyone thought the matter was over, Qin Daoxian walked up to the wicked woman and said, "Tell me, why did you choose to insult their mother and son tonight? Don't you know that I'm coming to Chen's house as a guest tonight?" Hearing this, Qin Liangyu reacted. Yes. He clearly told her wife that he was going to invite the young patriarch to be a guest at his house today, so that she could prepare for life. How could this kind of thing happen? Unless... He glanced at his wife, whom he had known for many years, and an unbelievable thought popped up. Could it be that all of this was calculated by his own wife behind the scenes? But why? Suddenly, a terrifying thought loomed in his heart, but he couldn't believe it was true. "It's you." The second lady is not stupid, she instantly realized who was behind the scenes. I saw her pointing at the eldest lady and said, "It's you, right? Must be you. You are afraid that Nianshu will steal the identity of Yunsheng's direct son, so you want to get rid of him. No, it's to get rid of the two of us, you so cruel." Hearing this accusation, Qin certainly couldn't accept it. I saw her face pale and said, "Don't spit, you bully other people's mother and son, what's with me? Did I let you bully their mother and son?" Seeing this big play, Qin Daoxian's face suddenly became frosty. He originally thought that the Qin family had a patriarch like Qin Xinhe who worked hard for the family and did not hesitate to give up the road, and there were also pure clan members like Qin Beiwang who were willing to do their best and die. The Qin family is definitely a family without the slightest dirt. But now it seems that there is darkness that cannot be illuminated everywhere. The key is, even Qin Daoxian couldn't say a word about what Chen's did. She took full advantage of Second Lady Qin Liangji's own jealousy and her mean character. In the words of the previous life, this is a high IQ borrowed knife to kill. He glanced at Qin Liangyu, then at Qin Yunxing and Chen's wives and said in an ethereal voice, "Do you still remember my Qin clan's training?" "Remember?" Seeing that everyone didn't speak, Qin Daoxian got really angry and yelled loudly, "Me!" Qin Liangyu knelt on the ground and lowered his head. Seeing this, Qin Yunxing also knelt down with his father. In the end, everyone in the Qin residence, including the first lady, the second lady, and even Qin Liangji's youngest daughter, all knelt there. In the end, Qin Liangyu seemed to have a fire burning in his heart, his face flushed red, and the ancient ancestral teaching slowly said from his mouth, "All my blood of the Qin family are from the Qin family. Every blood of my Qin clan is from my Qin clan. Qin Liangyu, tell me, where did the Qin clan come from?" Qin Daoxian stared at him intently as well as at Qin Shi. Both of them lowered their heads, not daring to look at each other. Qin Yanchu looked at the scene in front of him, and there was a faint fire burning in his eyes. He squeezed his small fists tightly, only to feel a mass of heat in his chest. That was the hot blood of the Qin family surging. Qin Daoxian walked up to him and said in a voice that could only be heard by him, "Do you like the Qin family like this?" This sentence seems to remind the little boy of a lot of not-so-good memories. He shook his head and said, "I don't like it." "Then let's make it what you like together, okay?" Qin Daoxian lowered his head and just hit Qin Nianka's small eyes. Qin Yanchu seemed to see something different in the eyes of the big brother in front of him. It was something he had been looking forward to for a long time, but had always been unattainable. He nodded uneasily, "Okay." He thought for a while, "But I also have a request." "What?" "Why don't you be my father?" Qin Daoxian. Chapter 39. Time flies by day. So, a month has passed. Due to the discovery of an immortal seedling of the family, Qin Daoxian has been mixed for a while. If it is placed in another family, it is good news to find a cultivator seedling. But the Qin family is a small family with shallow roots after all. There is no spiritual vein in the clan, only one spiritual eye, and it is only enough for Qin Daoxian to practice alone. As such, even if the immortal seedling Qin Daochu was discovered, the Qin family did not have any more spiritual energy to supply him to practice. Inside the cave. After Qin Daoxian instructed Qin Daochu to practice in the mortal realm today, he thought urgently, no matter what, the spiritual veins of the family must be cultivated within this year. Qin Daoxuan's goal is not a wild idea. He had this idea, and it was all the confidence that the explosive production capacity of the Feijin factory in the past month gave him. A month. Not counting the flying swords that failed to be refined due to the improper operation of the workers, Qin Daoxian refined a total of 148 flying swords. On average about 5 mouthfuls a day. With so many flying swords, even if they were sold at the market price of Guang'an Prefecture, they would still be able to sell 7,400 spirit stones, which would not only recover all the cost of Qin Daoxuan's investment this time, but also make a small profit. It's only a month away. In 1 year, Qin Daoxian would have earned at least 34,000 spirit stones. It takes 3 years to accumulate spiritual stones that can cultivate spiritual veins. However, Qin Daoxian intends to solve the problem of the family's spiritual veins in a year. Obviously, it is not enough to rely on the way of Guang'an Mansion. Think of this. He silently took out a cyan scale from the storage bag. This scale is diamond-shaped with a faint trace of dark red blood on it. It was the scale of life left by the princess of the merman race, Luo Li, to Qin Daoxian. It's just that it's been 2 months now and the scales don't seem to react at all. Qin Daoxian had tried to input his infuriating energy 3 times, but all of them fell into disarray. This made Qin Daoxian wonder if the mermaid woman named Luo Li was deceiving him. But think about it carefully, the possibility of the other party deceiving him is infinitely close to 0. Because there is really nothing in Qin Daoxian that is worth deceiving. And trading with him, whether it is for the merman or the Qin family, is a matter of mutual benefit. Ugh. Sighed. Qin Daoxian no longer thought about it, and immediately put the blue scales into the storage bag. Today's practice begins. Of course. During this period of time, in addition to the explosion in the number of instruments produced by the family's Feijin factory, Qin Daoxuan's improvement in cultivation has far exceeded his expectations. Originally, he thought that it would take him 4 to 5 months or even half a year to break through to the 4th level of qi refining. As a result, after only 2 months of cultivation, he felt that he was on the verge of a breakthrough. Such a terrifying cultivation speed finally let him know why Zhou Mubai was able to successfully establish a foundation at the age of 21. Normally, a monk with the 9th level of qi refining wants to build a foundation, and he must polish his true qi for a long period of time, so that the true qi is so pure that it is impossible to advance, and then he can try to break through the foundation building stage. Of course, this is just one of the most basic conditions for breaking through the foundation establishment period. As for the requirements of foundation building for resources such as spiritual veins and foundation building pills, it has not been included. It is precisely because of the various requirements of cultivators to build foundations, there are only a handful of cultivators who can build foundations in the group of loose cultivators. Basically, they rely on the accumulation of military exploits on the battlefield of Izumo to obtain breakthroughs in resources. Those ordinary loose cultivators who are unwilling to go to the battlefield are not even able to cultivate enough spiritual energy, let alone break through to the foundation establishment stage. In the Dongfu practice room, Chen Daoxuan's eyes were tightly closed, and the pure aura continued to spray out from the water spirit beads. Coupled with the assistance of Qi gathering pill, at this moment, Chen Daoxuan's speed of refining spiritual energy is beyond the reach of Tianling and Cultivator. As the pure aura enters the meridians, it is continuously refined and transformed into true Qi, which is stored in the Dantian Qi Si bit by bit. Dantian gas is domestic. True Qi is growing at a speed that is almost visible to the naked eye. Sudden. Chen Daoxian was blessed to the heart. He had the feeling that he broke through the fourth level of Qi refining at this moment. His hunch was right. With the continuous accumulation of true Qi in the Dantian Qi Si, the total amount of true Qi in the Dantian seems to have reached a threshold. Boom. A roar exploded in Chen Daoxuan's sea of consciousness. He only felt that his consciousness had suddenly increased a bit, and more than that, the sea of Qi in his Dantian had also transformed. When his consciousness returned in the next second, he found that the cyclone in his Dantian Qi Si suddenly increased by a circle. Compared to before, his total amount of infuriating energy has grown by at least 50%. Fourth level of Qi refining, it's done. Chen Daoxian opened his eyes, his face full of surprise. Calculate carefully. He is only 4 months away from breaking through the third level of Qi refining, not even half a year. Compared with the breakthrough from the second level of Qi refining to the third level of Qi refining, the time he spent not only did not increase, but it was shortened several times. This obviously does not conform to the normal cultivation rules. Under normal circumstances, the further a cultivator practiced, the slower his breakthrough speed would be. That is to say, the breakthrough from the third Qi refining layer to the fourth Qi refining layer is definitely slower than the breakthrough from the second Qi refining layer to the third Qi refining layer. But Chen Daoxian broke this rule at this time. Chen Daoxian knew in his heart that it wasn't his outburst of talent that caused him to break the law of cultivation, but the help of the Shui Lingzhu and Qi gathering pill. In the final analysis, it is the credit of the cultivation resources. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but think of those immortal cultivators, and even the core disciples of Chenyuan Jianzong, what kind of cultivation conditions should be. Those who can become the core disciples of Chenyuan Jianzong are all geniuses among geniuses. As far as Chen Daoxian knew, the disciples of Chenyuan Sword Sect are divided into 3 categories: outer disciples, inner disciples, and direct disciples. I heard that even the lowest level outer disciples have requirements for qualifications, and they have reached the perverted spiritual roots, not to mention all kinds of tests and tempering of Xinxing and perseverance. Therefore, any disciple of Chenyuan Sword Sect who is placed in a loose cultivator is at an invincible level of the same rank. If it didn't have this ability, it would not have dominated the Wangxinghai for 1,000 years. Of course. Although Chen Daoxian knew that he was inferior to the disciples of the Chenyuan Sword Sect in terms of spiritual roots and resources, there was one point that the Chenyuan Sword Sect disciple Pai Ma couldn't compare to him. That is comprehension. He has the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, to store his understanding every day, and he has an epiphany every 10 days. Over time the effect will be terrifying. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help sinking his consciousness into the sea of consciousness space. Know the sea. 10 star dusts are revolving around a golden scripture. 10 star dusts are attracted to each other, but they are deliberately controlled by Chen Daoxian, and they are not allowed to gather together. Perhaps he had just broken through to the fourth level of Qi refining, and Chen Daoxian had a vague feeling that perhaps the breakthrough opportunity for wind-chasing sword art was also tonight. Think of this. He no longer suppressed the aggregation of 10 stardust, and allowed them to come together to form a larger stardust, which finally exploded and filled the entire sea of consciousness. Immediately afterwards, Chen Daoxuan's consciousness continued to rise, and various insights about wind-chasing sword art continued to flood into his mind. Chen Daoxian was quickly immersed in it, forgetting the passage of time. Chapter 40. After a stick of incense, Chen Daoxian opened his eyes, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. Then a surge of ecstasy overwhelmed him. After careful calculation, it has only been 4 months since he practiced wind-chasing sword art. Even for the kendo geniuses of Chenyuan Jianzong, there are only a handful of people who can reach the realm of Xiaoqing after cultivating the wind-chasing sword art in just 4 months. Not to mention that he had already surpassed the general Deshang realm before Chen Daoxian. But Chen Daoxian has a perverted plug-in of Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, after all. He can accumulate comprehension, and he can have an epiphany every 10 days. Although the time for each epiphany is not long, it is only the time of a stick of incense. But after 4 months he had a dozen epiphanies. What is this concept? You must know that it took him only 2 epiphanies to cultivate the wind-chasing sword art, to the realm of great achievement. After 10 times of epiphany, he finally cultivated the wind-chasing sword art, to the perfect state today. Judging from the number of epiphanies, it seems that it is about 5 times more difficult to cultivate the wind-chasing sword art, from Deshang to the perfect state than from the entry-level cultivation to the Deshang state. In fact, it is 10 times more difficult or even 100 times more difficult. Because even if ordinary Qi cultivators spend a lifetime, it is impossible to cultivate it from the great achievement to the consummation realm. After all, there are some things that you can't understand even if you are not convinced. No matter how much time you spend grinding, you will not understand at all. Otherwise, there would not be so many world-class mathematical problems that could not be solved in the previous life. The next day, Qin Daoxian had just broken through the 4th level of Qi refining, which was still vain, but after a night of practice, it became solid again. Out of the cave, Qin Daoxian saw a small figure standing on the viewing cliff, practicing his sword against the rising sun. Maybe it was not long after practicing martial arts, this little figure danced the sword, still a little jerky, holding the 10-kilogram fine iron long sword in his hand. It seemed even more trembling. Qin Daoxian watched quietly without making a sound. Qin Daoxian knew Qin Daoqi's stubborn character after getting along for a month. Of course, there are pros and cons to this character, and the good part is that people with this character tend to have amazing perseverance and courage. The disadvantage is that it is also likely to fall into a demonic obstacle in the future practice and cannot extricate oneself. Soon, the time for half a stick of incense passed. Qin Daoqi was so tired and sweaty that he was all over his body, as if he had been fished out of water. Hu! 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 I saw him sitting on the edge of the cliff, panting heavily. Qin Daoxian came over at this time and pointed, "Cross-legged luck, stay in Danton. Young patriarch." Qin Daoqiu turned his head and saw Qin Daoxian struggling to get up and salute, but was stopped by Qin Daoxian. "Happy luck." "Yes, young patriarch." Hearing this, Qin Daoqiu adjusted his breathing, sat down with his knees crossed, and luckily adjusted his breath. Seeing that Qin Daoqiu was able to enter the state of meditation proficiently, Qin Daoxian nodded with satisfaction, and then flew out of the wind control technique and flew in the direction of the magic weapon factory. A busy day begins again. Southwest waters of Wuxia. The underwater world is about 10,000 miles away from Jianghu Island. The underwater world of Wuxia is different from what Qin Daoxian imagined, and it is also completely different from the underwater world on Earth. Normally, because there is no light on the deep seabed, it will present a dark scene, and the picture can be said to be comparable to the dark space. The seabed of Wuxia is different. The underwater world of Wuxia is a world of bright stars. Here, if you look up and look up, you will find hundreds of millions of stars, suspended in the undersea shady layer tens of thousands of meters high. These hundreds of millions of stars illuminate the entire underwater world of Wuxia, allowing countless species to survive and multiply in the underwater world of Wuxia. This is also the origin of the name Wuxia. Father. The seabed in the southwest waters of Wuxia. A mermaid woman with a wound in her left arm and a gap in her right shoulder swam to a mermaid man with a huge gap in her chest, and said sadly, "If we keep fighting like this, even if we put the water if the demon ape's territory is taken down, the clansmen will suffer heavy casualties." The merman woman who spoke was none other than the merman princess, Luo Li, whom Qin Daoxian met on the way back. Just looking at her miserable appearance, these days are obviously not very good. Cough cough. Hearing this, the merman clan chief coughed violently. "Zhou caused me more serious injuries than I thought." With that said, he lowered his head and looked at the wound in front of his chest where the sword qi was raging, and said with a headache, "I have to suppress this sword qi with force at all times, otherwise the injury will only get heavier." Speaking of this, the head of the merman clan looked gloomy. "But, if I don't join the war, you can't deal with the leader of the water demon ape." Hearing this, Luo Li was silent. She knew that what her father said was the truth. Without her father, a high-level mercenary in the late Third Order stage, they would not be able to help the Water Demon Ape clan just by virtue of their highest cultivation level, which is only equivalent to the mere people of the foundation-building stage of the human race. Because the leader of the Water Demon Ape clan entrenched on the Demon Ape Mountain is a mid-tier 3 existence. The other party has never done anything to the low-level mere people of the mere people, and is completely afraid of her father, the leader of the Mare people of the late Third Order. However, the other party did not know that his father suffered such a serious injury. Otherwise, now it would not be the Merman clan pressing the Water Demon Ape clan to fight, but the opposite situation. Hateful. Seeing his severely injured father, Luoli felt for the first time that he was so incompetent that he couldn't hold up a sky for the Merman. Father, why don't we stop attacking the Demon Monkey Mountain and change the territory again? Seemingly seeing the annoyance in Luoli's eyes, the Merman clan chief finally made a decision in his heart. He stroked Luoli's hair and smiled slightly. Silly boy, we have been searching for so long in the bottom of the sea, where are we? Is there a more suitable territory for my Mare people to thrive than the Mountain of Demons? Hearing this, Luoli was silent. She knew that what her father said was right. The competition among the various races in the underwater world was more cruel and naked than the competition in the human world. 3 days later, I will face off against the leader of the Water Demon Ape and kill this beast, the patriarch of the Merman clan said loudly. But father, your injury. It's okay, a mid-tier third-level Water Demon Ape leader is not in my eyes. The patriarch of the Merman clan was arrogant, but when he looked at Luoli, there was a faint hint of reluctance. In the end, this reluctance was thrown away by him and turned into a firm color. 3 days later, we will launch a general attack on the Water Demon Ape clan in Demon Ape Mountain. Hearing this, Luoli nodded excitedly, but immediately seemed to think of something. By the way, father, didn't we agree to cooperate with the Chen family on the Jianghu Island? Why not buy a batch of weapons from them to enhance the strength of the clan? With the clansmen with weapons, their strength will definitely increase a lot. As if thinking of Qin Daoxuan's flying snow sword, Luoli said excitedly. Originally, it was because of the Water Demon Ape leader that the Mare people were all tentative attacks, but now that they have launched a general attack, they must put all their chips on the table. A weapon that can enhance the strength of the tribe is obviously a very important bargaining chip. Hearing this, the Merman clan chief thought for a while, then nodded and said, okay, I'll leave this matter to you. Obviously, he also felt that the magical weapon's increase in the strength of the tribe was extraordinary, and it would definitely be of great help to the next battle. Chapter 41. 5 days later. Hongyin Feijin Factory. Chen Liangyu approached Qin Daoxian with a worried expression. Young patriarch, the spiritual ore in the warehouse is only enough for the factory to produce for 1 day. Running out so soon? Call? Qin Daoxian raised his head, exhaled a breath of turbid breath and said, I already know about this matter, and I will go to Guang'an House in person the day after tomorrow to sell this batch of flying swords. As he said that, he patted Chen Liangyu on the shoulder. After I leave, the Hongyin Feijin factory will be handed over to you. Hearing this, Chen Liangyu said solemnly, this subordinate will definitely live up to the heavy trust. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian nodded with satisfaction, and was about to encourage him a few more words when he suddenly noticed a change, and immediately waved his hand and said, go and do it first. Subordinates retire. I watched Chen Liangyu leave. Qin Daoxian took out a cyan scale from the storage bag. I saw that at this moment, the red light flickered on the cyan scales, exuding the slightest warmth. Qin Daoxian immediately injected a stream of true qi into the blue scales according to the method originally explained by Luoli, and immediately sank his consciousness into it. Next second, a message poured into Qin Daoxuan's mind. 400 miles away. Sequoia Island. Qin Daoxian raised his head and looked to the east of Jianghu Island. According to the message from Luoli, she seems to want to trade with Qin Daoxian on Sequoia Island. Sequoia Island is a large desert island near Jianghu Island, only about 400 miles away from Jianghu Island. It's just that compared to Jianghu Island, the cultivation resources on Sequoia Island are even poorer. At the beginning of Jianghu Island, there was still a copper ore vein and some spiritual eyes for monks to practice. Sequoia Island has neither mineral resources such as spiritual ore, nor spiritual energy resources such as spiritual eyes, except that the island is covered with a kind of cedar tree called red cedar. As for a higher resource such as the spiritual veins, don't even think about it. This is a completely deserted island. Except that the island is larger than Jianghu Island, it is almost useless for monks. Not to mention the cultivator family, even the scattered cultivators are reluctant to choose such a place for a foothold. In fact, it is near the waters of Jianghu Island. There are still a lot of island groups, but there are almost no islands that can have cultivation resources. At least according to the ancient records of the Qin family, in the thousands of miles of sea near here, except for Jianghu Island, which has a few spiritual eyes. The other islands are basically desert islands, and they don't even have spiritual eyes. Of course. It is also possible that there are so many spiritual eyes in some hidden place on these islands, but they have not been discovered. Anyway, although there are many islands in the waters around Jianghu Island, there are very few monks. It seems that in addition to the Qin family on Jianghu Island, there is only one place called Fenggu Island, where a loose cultivator with the 5th level of qi refining stops. Qin Daoxian was overjoyed when he received Luo Li's message. Compared with going to Guang'an Prefecture to sell flying swords to loose cultivators, trading with the Mer people is obviously more profitable. Sangxiafeng City in Guang'an Prefecture. Even if the price of Hongyin Feijian is high, it is estimated that it will be difficult to exceed 100 spirit stones. And the price offered by the sharks is 5 times that of 100 spirit stones. From the point of view of interests, it is an obvious thing to choose whom to trade with. Qin Daoxian has been thinking about when the Mer people will come to trade with him for a long time, but he did not expect to wait for more than 2 months before the news came. Organize your thoughts. Qin Daoxian counted the 178 flying swords in the storage bag, and when he even used the wind control technique, he flew alone in the direction of Sequoia Island. It is different from the journey of nearly 100,000 miles to go to Guang'an. Sequoia Island is only 400 miles away from Jianghu Island. This distance, with Qin Daoxian's 4th level qi refining level, can easily fly over. Sequoia Island. Looking down from the sky, Sequoia Island is completely shrouded in fiery red. Due to this obvious feature, even when he first came to this island, Qin Daoxian discovered it in the nearby waters at a glance. Descend from the sky and land on the cliff of the island. Qin Daoxian took out the blue scales again and injected a burst of infuriating energy. Then another message came over. Qin Daoxian identified the direction and flew towards the north of the island. The sea north of Sequoia Island. Led by Luo Li, a group of sharks lurked in the reefs hundreds of meters deep. If you look closely, you will find that almost all of these sharks hold a huge scallop in their hands, and they can see overflowing aura from the cracks of the scallops. Obviously, these scallops contain all the spiritual stones that the Mer people are ready to use for trading. His Royal Highness, why hasn't he come yet? In the merman group, a male merman with bronzed muscles and knots all over his body murmured. Don't worry, just wait. Although Luo Li was also uneasy, he patiently comforted his subordinates. Hearing the words of Her Royal Highness the Princess, everyone continued to wait silently. Coming? Suddenly, a surprise flashed across Luo Li's pretty face. Go, let's go up. Luo Li gave an order and swam to the sea first. The Mer people are extremely fast in the sea. In just a few breaths, the group of sharks swam to the sea. As soon as Luo Li swam out of the sea, she saw Qin Daoxian standing in the sky. She cautiously used her divine sense to probe the 4 directions. Luo Li breathed a sigh of relief when he found that there was no one around except Qin Daoxian. Human cultivator, you are so courageous that you dare to come alone. Are you not afraid that we will kill you and swallow your weapon? Seeing that Qin Daoxian was all alone under the gaze of the merman people, he was so calm, and Luo Li felt uncomfortable for a while. If it was the merman who was so surrounded by a group of human monks, he was shivering with fright for a long time. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian smiled. I know that the Mer people are the most honest and I am willing to come alone, and it is precisely because of the integrity of the Mer people. Besides, the transaction between you and me is a matter of mutual benefit. Why do you want to harm me? It's not that you plan to trade with my clan this time, right? After all, the magic weapon has a service life. You live in the deep sea for a long time, and the service life of the magic weapon may be shorter. Will the Mer people give up long-term interests for the sake of coveting this mere hundreds of flying swords? So why should I be afraid? Luo Li originally wanted to overwhelm the other party in terms of momentum, but without thinking about Qin Daoxian's 3 or 2 words, she easily disintegrated the momentum she had finally built up. Looking at Qin Daoxian with a smile on his face, Luo Li opened his mouth and finally had to say something depressing. As expected of a human cultivator, he is really eloquent. Thank you, Miss Luo, for the compliment. Qin Daoxian bowed his hands, but let's make a deal as soon as possible so that my 2 clans can feel at ease with each other. Hearing Qin Daoxian mentioning the transaction, Luo Li immediately cast aside his little depression and said excitedly, How many weapons have you brought with you on this trip? Qin Daoxian did not speak, and directly took out more than 100 flying swords from the storage bag. Immediately, the sea is full of light. When the people of the Merman clan saw the sharp flying swords in front of them, one by one their eyes were red. Chapter 42. Seeing the clansmen look like they had never seen the world before, Luo Li felt that she couldn't hold her head up even more in front of Qin Daoxian. Cough cough. She couldn't help coughing in a low voice, but the simple and honest mermaid clansmen didn't care to speculate on the thoughts of Her Royal Highness the Princess. All they were thinking about at the moment were the weapons in front of them. His Royal Highness, if we can have these weapons, the clansmen will not know how many casualties they would have to avoid in the battle with the demon clan. A male merman took a flying sword, injected a demon power and muttered. Hearing this, Luo Li also became hot in her heart. She looked at Qin Daoxian and said, "Human cultivator, did you build this weapon?" "Yeah, this is too little, it's not enough points at all." "Yeah, too little." The other mermaids chimed in. "Forgive Miss Luo, the transaction time you proposed is really too short. It's only a mere 2 months. We don't have enough time for either the raw materials of spiritual ore or the refining of magic weapons, so that's all for now." Qin Daoxian shook his head and said regretfully, "Spirit ore?" Luo Li seemed to remember something, took a piece of radiant ore from a subordinate merman, and said, "Is the spiritual ore in your mouth this kind of thing?" "Right." When Qin Daoxian saw the piece of spiritual ore in Luo Li's hand, his heart jumped fiercely. The underwater world of the Wuxia is too rich. It is a pity that the human race is a terrestrial race and cannot survive in the deep sea at all. Otherwise, what would Qinyuan Jianzong need to attack Izumo? The underwater world of Wuxia has long been penetrated. Seeing the spiritual ore in Luo Li's hands, Qin Daoxian couldn't help feeling the urge to go to the underwater world of Wuxia to find out. But when he thought of going to the deep sea world, he had to at least cultivate the second-order water escape technique to the realm of Deshang, so he died. It is not easy to cultivate the second-order water escape technique to the realm of great achievement, which means that the monk must at least reach the foundation building stage, and he must be a senior foundation building monk, not the kind that has just broken through. The monks can only practice various escape techniques when they reach the foundation building stage. At that time, the cultivator's flying speed will skyrocket by a large amount. Familiar escaping techniques such as escape the light, transforming the rainbow, and flying with the sword are all skills that can only be used by the foundation establishment cultivator. Ordinary chi-refining cultivators can only walk against the wind, and the speed is more than 10 times slower than that of foundation building cultivators. Luo Li was not stupid. Seeing Qin Daoxian's gleaming eyes, she knew that the spiritual ore in her hand was of extraordinary value. She moved slightly in her heart and said, "If you trade this kind of spiritual ore with your Qin family, what price can you make?" The market price of second-order spiritual ores in Guang'an Prefecture is generally more than 10 times that of first-order spiritual ores. The Guishui adamantium in Luo Li's hands is the most expensive among the second-order spiritual ores. Its price is several times that of ordinary second-order spiritual ore. According to Qin Daoxian's knowledge, the price of Guishui fine gold is about 150 spirit stones per pound in the Guang'an Prefecture spirit or market. And often there is no market for the price, so you need to order in advance with the seller who sells this kind of spirit ore, or auction it at the auction house. Although the reserves of second-order spiritual ore in Wuxia and Xianyunzhu are still very rich, they are almost controlled by sects and big immortals, and it is difficult for small families and loose cultivators to buy them. This situation is even worse in Guang'an Prefecture. As far as Qin Daoxian knew, only a few big families such as the Zhou family, the Yang family, and the Wu family had the second-order spiritual ore veins in their hands. This kind of resource, even the general newly promoted foundation family does not have. In Guang'an Prefecture, the birth of 1 or 2 foundation-building cultivators from a small family or a group of scattered cultivators is not a big deal at all. After all, many small family cultivators and loose cultivators, relying on their military exploits in the Izumo country, are lucky enough to obtain enough resources to attack the foundation. But it is not so easy to become a foundation-building family that has been established by the foundation-building cultivators from generation to generation. The inheritance of family exercises, spiritual veins above the second rank, various cherished resources, lucrative family industries, huge family population size and other conditions are indispensable. Of course, the above-mentioned family backgrounds basically have nothing to do with the Chen family on Jianghu Island. If there is one thing the Qin family can barely meet the standard, it is a lucrative family business. Although Qin Daoxian's magic tool factory outside Chongping County does not seem to be large enough at present, in terms of potential, it is definitely worthy of the word rich. Seeing that Qin Daoxian did not speak, Luoli couldn't help but leaned closer and asked, "Human monk, what is the price of this spiritual ore?" Perhaps because the distance was a little closer, Qin Daoxian could actually smell a faint fragrance emanating from Luoli's body. Hearing Luoli's questioning, Qin Daoxian came back to his senses and cupped his hands. "Sorry, Miss Luoli, I really didn't expect you to come up with such precious spiritual ore, and I lost my temper for a while." After a pause he continued, "This kind of spiritual ore in your hand is the second-order spiritual or guishui fine gold, and its price is about 100 spiritual stones per kilogram. This piece in your hand." Qin Daoxian took the guishui fine gold ore in Luoli's hand, swayed the weight and said, "This piece of guishui fine gold is not light, it weighs about 10 pounds. Hearing this, Luoli's eyes lit up. "You mean this piece of spiritual ore can buy 2 of these weapons?" She pointed to the red shadow flying sword and said in surprise, "That's right." Qin Daoxian nodded. Hearing this answer, Luoli was full of joy. The piece of spiritual ore in her hand was mined by the Mare people from a vein on the Demon Ape Mountain. It's just that the sharks were driven out of the mine by the water demon ape before they had mined much. Although Luoli kept saying that the flying swords made by Qin Daoxian were cheap, but in fact they didn't have many spirit stones in stock. The reason why they were so embarrassed was because the mermen hurriedly evacuated from the waters near Lingbei Island, and there were not many spiritual stones with them at all. After all, for the Mare people, the spirit stone has little effect. Although their Mare people also need to use spiritual energy to practice, the spiritual energy in the spiritual stone is not even a drop in the bucket compared to the huge spiritual energy required for the Mare people to practice. Naturally, the mermen will not bring a lot of this useless waste in the process of migrating their clan. The only spiritual stones left in the hands of the mermen are the foresight patriarchs of the Mare people. Knowing that the spiritual stones seem to be very important to the human race, they forced the tribe to carry some of them. Right now, the people of the Mare people are stroking the weapons in their hands, and they can't help but be grateful for the great vision of the patriarch. Qin Daoxian looked at Luoli's pretty face blushing and looked very excited and pondered, "Miss Luo, I have a little suggestion for the cooperation between our 2 races." Luoli was happy at this moment, raised her little hand as bright and clean as jade and said, "Tell me. I don't know much about the deep-sea world, and the mermen don't seem to know much about my human world. Why don't I give the nobles a copy of my human world's various treasures of minerals and elixir? If you find something in the deep-sea world, you can trade with our family. Of course, the specific price can be negotiated between us when the time comes. In short, we won't let you Mare people suffer." Luoli seemed to have a good impression of Qin Daoxian. She smiled and said, "Where's the picture book?" Qin Daoxian took out a jade slip from the storage bag and handed it over. Luoli took the jade slip and stuffed it directly under the 2 scallops on her chest. Qin Daoxian turned his head slightly when he saw it. Luoli didn't care. She clapped her hands and said, "Okay. Well," Qin Daoxian said with a smile, "in that case let's count your weapons." "It's just 128 weapons, there's no need to count them," Luoli pouted. "You're afraid that my merman will deceive you and you want to count the spirit stones, right?" Luoli said and waved his little hand. I saw that the sharks lifted up the huge scallops and opened them, and Qin Daoxian still counted the spiritual stones inside. Qin Daoxian's consciousness swept away slightly and said cheerfully, "Miss Luo misunderstood. How can I doubt the integrity of the Mare people?" After he finished speaking, he rolled up his sleeves, lifted his true chi and put all the spirit stones into the storage bag until the storage bag was full. Chapter 43. Seeing Qin Daoxian's appearance of fully trusting the merman, Luoli's pretty face flushed slightly, and she was even more fond of Qin Daoxian in her heart. Thinking that he had misunderstood Qin Daoxian, Luoli was a little shy and said, "Human cultivator, I have known each other for so long but I still don't know your name?" These words made Qin Daoxian stunned. Didn't he tell him his name? "My surname is Qin and my name is Daoxian. Miss Luo calls me by my name." Qin Daoxian arched his hands. "Okay." Luoli took a deep look at Qin Daoxian, turned over and jumped into the sea, followed by the rest of the mermen. "Qin Daoxian, I remember your name." It wasn't until all the mermen disappeared that this soft voice sounded in Qin Daoxian's ears. Divine consciousness swept around and found that the Mare people were really gone. Qin Daoxian immediately flew to Sequoia Island and found a hidden cave on the island. Immediately dump out all the spirit stones in the storage bag. Tens of thousands of spiritual stones were piled on the ground, and they suddenly piled up into a small mountain, and the overflowing spiritual light illuminated the entire cave like day. 1 2 3 4. Chen Daoxian was excited, and he counted the spirit stones carefully one by one, like a rich landlord. If Luoli saw this scene, it is estimated that his nose would be crooked, and his good impression of Chen Daoxian would be gone. 63,999, 64,000. 64,000 spirit stones just right. A satisfied smile appeared on Chen Daoxian's face. Take this transaction twice, and then go to Guang'an House to buy a set of Yunling Great Array, and the spiritual veins of Jianghu Island will be settled. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian became more and more happy. Sure enough, smuggling with foreigners is the real profit. But immediately, Chen Daoxian had a vigilance in his heart. This kind of huge profits, he believes that the huge Wanxinghai must not only be done by his Chen family, he must be more careful. Why do you think so much? At least now the Mare people only trade with my Chen family. As long as they are not exposed, my Chen family will be fine. Besides, if you want the family to grow and develop, how can you be afraid of wolves and tigers? Shaking his head and laughing at himself, Chen Daoxian put the matter behind him. Put away the spiritual stones piled up on the ground. Chen Daoxian flew out of the cave, identified the direction, and flew back towards Jianghu Island. By the time Chen Daoxian rushed back to Jianghu Island, the sky was already bright. After thinking about it, he did not go to the cave to practice, nor to the magic weapon factory. Instead, all the senior members of the clan were convened and a clan meeting was held again. Chongping County. Chen's Ancestral Hall. In the huge discussion hall, the senior officials of the Chen clan stood with their heads bowed. On the left were the senior officials of the instrument factory headed by Chen Liangyu, and on the right were officials from the Chongping County government. Chen Daoxian's eyes swept over Chen Liangyu, and finally fell on Chen Ji, the magistrate of Chongping County, who was first on the right. Chen County Magistrate, have you completed the investigation of the details of the population within the clan that I ordered you to investigate? Young Patriarch, Chen Ji bowed his hands. My subordinates completed the investigation 10 days ago, and after review by the county government, it was found that my Chen family had 1,039 children under the age of 10, with the most young adults aged 15 to 40, reaching 1,665. The number of people over 40 is the least, only 969 people. Among them there are 914 adult males and 751 adult females in the family, and the population in the county. Chen Ji skillfully reported the family population data again. The results of this population review are generally the same as the data submitted by the county government 10 days ago. It proves that Chen Ji did not slack off during this period of time, and he investigated all the details of the population of the clan. In this population data, Chen Daoxian is most interested in the adult population and children under the age of 10. In this world, men and women are generally married at a younger age. Women usually get married around the age of 13 or 14, while men get married a little later, but generally no more than 15 years old. The Chen family has not been able to grow and develop on Jianghu Island for so many years. On the one hand, the cultivation resources are insufficient, and they have not been able to produce enough monks to protect the clan. On the other hand, the family industry is poor and cannot support the huge family population. With a population of tens of millions like the Zhou family in Guang'an, a small family like the Qin family would never dare to imagine. After all, the mortals of the family also consume various resources. Food, clothing, housing and transportation all consume resources. Although cultivators disliked these resources, they were also important resources that affected the foundation of the family, because they determined the population size of a family. For example, the basic condition for maintaining population size: food. Chen Daoxian didn't know how many spiritual veins the Zhou family had, but everyone in Guang'an Prefecture knew that the Zhou family had hundreds of islands just used to grow ordinary food. Not to mention the cargo ships coming and going from Guang'an Prefecture, constantly providing food for the Zhou family. It is because of these foods that the Zhou family's ethnic group will continue to grow, so that the population of the clan has reached tens of millions. Chen Daoxian also wants to follow the Zhou family's development model, but he needs to make certain changes on this basis. If the Chen family wants to grow and develop, it is impossible to rely on the thousands of people on Jianghu Island. All the senior members of the family are well aware of this. However, the family is in a difficult situation, and even the spiritual energy of the monks cannot be guaranteed. Blindly expanding the family population will only drag the family down completely. Qin Daoxian, who is a traveler, knows that if the population cannot be converted into productivity, it will only become a huge burden on the family, not a help. Fortunately, because of his existence, the Qin family has set off a little fairyland version of industrialization in the suburbs outside Chongqing County. There is no doubt about the demand for population from industrialization. Take the Feijian factory in the current industrial zone for example, although only 15 workers can run the Feijian factory. But the manpower required to surround this Feijian factory is far more than 15 people. For example, the person who purchases the raw materials of spiritual or the person responsible for managing the factory, and the person responsible for packaging the red shadow flying sword, that is, the workshop that produces the sword box. Qin Daoxian sells flying swords to cultivators, but it is not the same as selling them to the mermen without even packaging. These all require large populations. And with the expansion of the Feijian factory in the future, the population demand will also increase. Therefore, the Qin family not only wants to expand the population, but also Qin Daoxian is not going to use the expanded population to grow food. However, food is also an important foundation for the family, and the Qin family cannot always rely on external purchases to maintain the family's food consumption. For this situation, Qin Daoxian already had a solution in mind. But for the Qin family there are only two most important things. 1. Cultivate a spiritual vein. 2. Expand the size of the family population. Qin Daoxian planned to do these two things together. The matter of Lingmai has been settled very well. Now and even in the future, expanding the family population will be the basic policy of the Qin family. At least 300 years. The expansion of the Qin family's population will not stop. Think of this. Qin Daoxian looked at Qin Ji and said, "Qin County Magistrate, the day after tomorrow, I will set off to Guang'an Prefecture to purchase supplies for the family. During the 2 months I have been away, I want your county to set up a family planning department, which will be dedicated to family planning, responsible for encouraging and guiding the birth of the tribe. I set a goal for you. Within 3 years I want to expand the family population tenfold. Heard?" Qin Ji's complexion changed on the spot and he looked puzzled, but the patriarch, the family has not many fertile women, and it has expanded tenfold this. I know there are not enough women in the family right now, but it will be enough soon, Qin Daoxian said lightly. Chapter 44. Subordinates obey. Qin Ji led the order to retreat. He had already guessed in his heart what method the young patriarch would use to expand the female population in the clan. That's right, that is what almost all the cultivation forces in Wanxinghai are doing, buying female slaves from Izumo. The Izumo War between Qinyuan Jianzong and Xianyuns who lasted for 400 years. These 400 years. Whether they were monks, prisoners of war or mortals from Izumo, they were all sold to Wanxinghai in large numbers and became slaves to the major cultivation forces in Wanxinghai. The monks and prisoners of war in Izumo are better. If the enemy forces can afford the spirit stone, Qinyuan Jianzong allows the other party to redeem the prisoners of war by paying for the spirit stone. Izumo treated the prisoners of war of the Qinyuan sword sect in the same way. The war between the two sides has been fighting for so many years, and a set of secret and unannounced unspoken rules has long been formed. Everyone is fighting under this unspoken rule. Otherwise, if the two sides really don't follow any rules, then each other's high-level monks wantonly slaughter the enemy's low-level monks. This behavior is the most damaging to the enemy's forces and digs the enemy's foundation. But neither the Qinyuan sword sect nor the sect behind the Izumo kingdom chose this method. In Qin Daoxian's view, high-level monks are a strategic force like nuclear weapons for any party's cultivation forces. And the war between Wanxinghai and Izumo country consumes each other's heritage little by little. Relying on the 7 immortal cities established by Qinyuan Jianzong in Izumo, no, there are now 6 immortal cities, which are madly devouring the lives of monks on both sides every year. After so many years of war, the two sides are no longer able to stop saying that they can stop. If at the beginning the Qinyuan sword sect attacked the Cloud Kingdom only out of interest and revenge, then now the contradiction between the two sides is not only interest, but also the blood feud that has been forged for 400 years. For example, the Qin family on Jianghu Island sacrificed 12 monks of the immortal generation on the battlefield of Izumo. Can you not hate the monks of Izumo? Definitely hate it. The same is true of the attitude of Izumo cultivator towards Wanxinghai cultivator. It's just that from the results of the war between the two sides over the years, Qinyuan Jianzong has always been in the upper hand, maintaining the offensive against Izumo. Except for the loss of an immortal city in the battle 50 years ago, Qinyuan Jianzong rarely lost a war with Izumo. After arranging the affairs of the clan, Qin Daoxian set off on the voyage to Guang'an Mansion with the remaining 50 or so mounts of red shadow flying swords. A month later, on the deck of the Canglong, call. Qin Daoxian stretched his waist, leaned on the railing and looked at the magnificent sight of the white sails in the Guang'an port, and let out a sigh of relief. No matter how many times I watch it, I feel that this scene is extremely spectacular. Even from the perspective of Qin Daoxian's previous life. The exaggerated cargo throughput of Guang'an port is also far more than any modern port in the previous life. As far as Qin Daoxian knew, there are more than 10 million Zhou clan people living in Guang'an City alone. You must know that this is not a modern city with high-rise buildings like in the previous life. Guang'an Fufu City does not have so many reinforced concrete buildings, which can increase the population density of the city. Guang'an Prefecture can accommodate so many people, and it is entirely a city circle that is far bigger than the previous Earth City. The second time I came to Guang'an, Qin Daoxian is familiar with the road. Soon he settled down in the Fuqing Inn where the mortals lived, to settle the clansmen brought by this trip. After settling the clan, Qin Daoxian walked alone towards the Sangxiafeng city in the inner city of Guang'an Prefecture. Line up and enter the inner city. A series of processes have come down, and it is approaching evening. Qin Daoxian didn't dare to delay. He summoned a cloud-traversing beast car and headed towards the Hongyin Feijin shop in Sangxiafeng city. After a stick of incense, Qin Daoxian got out of the car. After getting out of the car, he seemed a little unable to believe the scene in front of him. At this moment, the Hongyin Feijin shop is surrounded by the scattered cultivators and small family cultivators who are entrenched in the scattered cultivator market. The shopkeeper, let's start quickly, it will be dark if it doesn't open. That's right, hurry up and smoke. Mr. Qin, let's get started. I've been here for more than a month and I haven't won the lottery once. I don't believe that my luck is so bad I can't win the lottery once. What is this, fellow Taoist, waiting here for the next 3 months? Qin Daoxian stood outside the crowd, listening to everyone's chattering voices, and then looking at the Hongyin Feijin shop surrounded by the crowd, and finally inquired about the ins and outs of the matter. It turned out that the dozens of first-order low-grade and first-grade middle-grade flying swords in the Hongyin Feijin store were completely popular in the vicinity shortly after the first day of sale. Qin Daoxian was mentally prepared for the flying swords in the Hongyin Feijin store. After all, he has done sufficient market research before opening the store. The quality of the magic instruments and other magic weapon shops simply cannot compete with the Hongyin Feijin shop. If his Qin family's flying sword could not be sold, there would be a ghost. But Qin Daoxian would never have imagined that the Hongyin Feijin shop could set off such a big momentum in Sangxiafeng City. Because after all, he only left less than 40 flying swords to Qin Shenhe. According to the degree of popularity Qin Daoxian saw, it should have been sold out long ago. How can there be a current scene? The reason why the Hongyin Feijin store is so popular is that Qin Shenhe played a hand in hunger marketing. On the first day after the opening of the Hongyin Feijin store, Qin Shenhe realized that the Qin family's Feijin would sell out. But he knew better that the inventory in the Hongyin Feijin store simply couldn't satisfy the huge market of the Sanctuary Square City. To know, there are hundreds of thousands of cultivators in the Sanctuary City of Guang'an Prefecture alone, not to mention the crowds that come and go every day. According to the Zhou family statistics, the number of cultivators in Guang'an Prefecture added up to more than 500,000 people every day. This shows the prosperity of Guang'an Prefecture. In such a huge market, the inventory of Hongyin Feijin store cannot even be turned over by a single wave. It's impossible for Qin Shenhe to sell out Feijin on the first day, and it will be closed for the remaining months, right? Then, the witty Qin Shenhe thought of a way to draw a lottery. When the Hongyin Feijin store first opened, he drew a lucky customer every day to get a chance to buy the Hongyin Feijin store at the normal market price. Qin Daoxian left a total of 23 first-order low-grade artifacts and 11 first-order middle-grade artifacts. At this rate, the Hongyin Feijin store would have to close for more than a month at most. The helpless Qin Shenhe could only continue to lengthen the interval between each draw. Up to now, Qin Shenhe has basically drawn prizes once a week, and finally waited until Qin Daoxian came to replenish the stock. Qin Shenhe glanced at the crowd, and when he was about to draw the lottery, he swept across Qin Daoxian in the crowd, and his face suddenly filled with excitement. Qin Daoxian found that although he hadn't seen each other for a few months, Uncle 13 looked better than in the family. Also, without those troubles in the family plus the booming business of the Hongyin Feijin shop, Qin Ziyan's complexion is not good enough. Manager Qin, hurry up and draw the lottery. Everyone is waiting. Yeah, let's draw the lottery, I've been waiting for a week. Hurry up. In the urging of everyone, Qin Xianhe took out a specially made note from a black stone box. Qin Xianhe glanced at the note and said, "Congratulations to the customer whose serial number is Jieqi, who won a chance to buy Feijian in our store." "I am me, it is me." Ah. A short man with a face full of flesh squeezed out from the crowd, waving a note exactly like Qin Xianhe in his hand, exclaiming in ecstasy. Chapter 45. Into the Night. Hongyin Feijin shop. In front of the tea table. Qin Xianhe made Qin Daoxian a cup of spiritual tea, looked him up and down and said with a smile, "Is everything in the family okay?" "All good." Taking the amber teacup handed over by Qin Xianhe, Qin Daoxian nodded. After the conversation changed, Qin Daoxian smiled and said, "By the way, Uncle 13, how did you come up with the idea of selling Feijin in this way?" "Hear this." Qin Xianhe immediately blew his beard and stared and said angrily, "It's not your kid's fault." After speaking, he couldn't help laughing first. "The flying sword you made is of high quality, and there is no other company in the whole city that can compare with it. But the number is too small, not enough for those loose cultivators." Speaking of this, Qin Xianhe shook his head regretfully. "By the way, how many flying swords did you bring this time?" Seemingly thinking of something, Qin Xianhe looked at Qin Daoxian expectantly and asked. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian smiled slightly, and immediately took out 55 flying swords from the storage bag. "The flying swords produced by the family during this period are all here." Qin Daoxian pointed to the neat pile of sword boxes on the ground. "See." Qin Xianhe stepped forward, opened the sword boxes one by one, and carefully checked the flying swords in the sword box. "Okay. This flying sword has 3 feet of sword light, the body of the sword has a flowing light, and the texture is excellent. This one is also good." Seeing Uncle 13 excited like a child, Qin Daoxian was also very happy. "Check it out." Qin Xianhe raised his head and said, "But why is there so little Feijian? I remember that we bought more than 3,000 spirit stones at the beginning. In addition to the ore reserves in the family, it should be more than refining this Feijian." "Yes." "Hear this." Qin Daoxian stood up quietly. He walked to the door of the store, checked the closed door, and then set up a soundproof formation before returning to his seat and said with a serious face, "Uncle 13, this is a long story." Then Qin Daoxian will talk about a series of things such as encountering the merman on the way back to Jianghu Island last time, and reaching a cooperation with the merman. Listen to Qin Daoxian's story. Qin Ziyan's mouth opened wider and wider. He did not expect that the family had undergone so many changes in just 3 months. Not only did he reach a cooperation with the merman tribe, but he also found a fairy seedling in the tribe. When he heard that Qin Daoxian found a fairy seedling in the clan, Qin Xianhe couldn't help sighing. With the probability of mortals giving birth to spiritual root monks, there are dozens of fairy seedlings hidden in our Chen family. It's a pity that I haven't been able to detect the spiritual root qualifications of the young children of my family in these years. I am completely afraid that after detecting the immortal seedlings, I will not be able to cultivate them, which will only increase the pain. Having been the acting patriarch for such a long time, Qin Daoxian could not be more clear about the worries in Qin Ziyan's mouth. It is true that the Qin family is completely able to select all the immortal seedlings in the clan and guide them on the path of cultivation. But then what? The Qin family has only one spiritual eye, which is only enough for Qin Daoxian to practice alone. Qin Xianhe even gave up his path for him. But can the other monks in the Qin family give up their practice for Qin Daoxian? Obviously not possible. After all, Qin Daoxian has the same identity as them, so why should they make sacrifices? As a result, the cultivators of the Qin family who are short of spiritual energy resources will inevitably fight infighting or even split. As for going to the battlefield of Izumo to fight for a way out, it is obvious that this road will not work either. The cultivator on the first floor of Qi refining, the Qinyuan sword sect would not even accept it. At that time, Qin Xianhe still relied on the military exploits of the cultivators of the Qin family Xian generation in the army to open the back door for Qin Xianhe to go to the battlefield. Otherwise, Qin Xianhe would not be qualified to set foot on the battlefield of Izumo with his cultivation of the 3rd level of Qi refining. This is also the reason why Qin Xianhe painstakingly wanted to cultivate a spiritual vein for the family. Seeing the immortal seedlings of the family unable to practice because of lack of spiritual energy, this kind of pain is indescribable. Actually from the heart. Qin Daoxian did not quite agree with the way Qin Xinhe managed the family. He thought that Qin Xinhe had put the cart before the horse. In Qin Daoxuan's eyes, family monks or clan talents are the most important foundation of a family. In fact, the Qin family can completely select all immortal seedlings and guide them on the path of cultivation. Even if these cultivators are only at the first level of qi refining, the Qin family can let them open up a deserted island in the sea near Jianghu Island. The Qin family only needs to take out the spiritual stones in the clan library and buy slaves to open up deserted islands for farming, which is definitely better than waiting for death with the spirit stones in the clan library. In this way, only after several generations of hard work, the Qin family will surely slowly get out of the predicament. Unlike when Qin Xinhe held it, the family looked lifeless. From this point of view, Qin Xinhe, the head of the Qin family, was not qualified. Actually helpless. After all, Qin Xinhe was not the real patriarch of the Qin clan back then. The reason why he became the patriarch was entirely a helpless move after the family cultivator died in battle and was ordered in danger. Seeing that the smile on Qin Xian's face slowly disappeared, it became bitter again. Qin Daoxian quietly handed over a storage bag. This is. Qin Xinhe glanced at Qin Daoxian suspiciously. Uncle 13, open it and take a look. Hearing this, Qin Xinhe probed his consciousness into the storage bag, and in the next second he suddenly jumped up from his seat, looked at Qin Daoxian with a shocked expression, lowered his voice and said, Daoxian, you are intercepting and killing him. A monk from Guang'an House? Ah. Qin Daoxian was stunned at first when he heard the words, and then he smiled bitterly. Uncle 13, can there be so many spirit stones for killing loose cultivators? That's true. Qin Xinhe nodded. Then how did you get these spirit stones? Although there is no detailed number, but according to Qin Xian's experience, this storage bag contains at least more than 50,000 spirit stones. What is this concept? In other words, this small storage bag contains at least half a first-order spiritual vein. How could Qin Xinhe not be shocked? Uncle 13, these spirit stones are all earned by me trading with the mare people. You mean, you sold most of the flying swords you made to the mermen? Qin Daoxian nodded, exactly. Hearing this answer, Qin Xian's heart jerked, and he looked at the flying sword on the ground, and suddenly felt that it was not fragrant. Then why don't you sell all these flying swords to the mare people? Qin Xinhe was a little distressed, as if he had lost hundreds of millions. I don't think that the supply of flying swords is tight here, Uncle 13. Besides, although the profit of the merman market is high, the market size cannot be compared with that of Guang'an Prefecture. The human market is the largest market for our Qin family. Qin Xinhe agreed with this sentence. These days he finally felt the enthusiasm of the loose cultivators in Guang'an Prefecture. Qin Xinhe even believed that if he raised the price of flying swords in the store to 80 or even 100 spirit stones, a large number of loose cultivators would be willing to buy them. It's just that he always remembered what his nephew said, to start the Hongyin Fijian signboard, so he chose to sell at the market price and did not take the opportunity to raise the price. And this kind of behavior has also established a good brand image for Hongyin Fijian in the minds of the majority of loose cultivators, making the reputation of Hongyin Fijian continue to expand. Up to now, almost all of the scattered repairers in the city of scattered repair shops have heard of such a Fijian shop, where the flying swords sold are not only of high quality but also cheap. The only downside is that the supply is insufficient and it is very difficult to buy. But this shortcoming is completely understandable in the eyes of loose cultivators. Because the loose cultivators all know that it is not easy for an artifact refiner to refine flying swords, and they must be refined one by one, so no one takes the opportunity to cause trouble. After all, it is a good thing for all scattered cultivators to have such an affordable magic weapon shop in the city of scattered cultivators. Chapter 46. Uncle 13, Qin Daoxian pondered for a moment and said, in addition to purchasing enough spirit mines for the Feijian factory, I have one more important thing to do. You mean? Qin Daoxian nodded. I mean the cultivation of family spiritual veins should be put on the agenda. Hear this. Qin Xian's face was flushed with excitement, and he was speechless for a long time, so he had to take a sip from the teacup on the tea table to calm down his excitement. A long time. Qin Xinhe, who had adjusted his emotions, said in a trembling voice, our Qin family has finally waited for this day. Speaking of this, Qin Shenhe couldn't help but burst into tears. Uncle 13. Qin Shenhe raised his hand and waved. I'm fine, just a little happy, haha. Seeing Qin Ziyan's appearance, Qin Daoxian couldn't help feeling very sad. Who knows how Qin Shenhe has survived all these years since the 12 immortal monks of the Qin family died in the Battle of the Cloud Kingdom 50 years ago. In all fairness, Qin Ziyan's talent is mediocre and it can even be said to be very poor. The means and ability to manage the family are also not very good. But it is such an ordinary cultivator of the Qin family who would rather keep the family's huge sum of more than 8,000 spiritual stones, and would rather give his spiritual energy resources to the younger cultivators, rather than abandon the family and the clansmen. Based on this alone, Qin Shenhe is worthy of his ancestors and his descendants, enough to be admired by the descendants of the Qin family. Wipe away tears. With a hoarse voice, Qin Shenhe said solemnly, cultivating a family's spiritual veins is no trivial matter, not only requires more than 100,000 spiritual stones, but also needs the assistance of a first-order spiritual formation. I don't need to worry about the spirit stone now, it's this spirit formation. Qin Shenhe thought for a while and said, I heard that Zhou's auction house in the core business district of Xianqing, Guang'an Prefecture, holds a small auction at the beginning of each month, where there are complete sets of first and second-order Yunling formation methods and cloths. Array materials auction. Have to say, Qin Shenhe spent 3 months in the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture, and his familiarity with the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture also became unusual. Like Qin Daoxian, he didn't know where the Yunling Great Array was sold in Guang'an Prefecture. Hear the news. Qin Daoxian looked happy and said, then what are you waiting for? We will go to the auction house tomorrow to see. Hearing this, Qin Shenhe laughed. Look at you impatient, Zhou's auction house will only hold an auction at the beginning of the month, and now count the days, there should be 3 days left. Taking advantage of this time, you can first prepare the materials for the spirit or in the Feijin factory. Hearing these words, Qin Daoxian patted his and said, Uncle 13 is still thoughtful. Okay, don't deliberately look for opportunities to flatter me, kid. Tell me, what are you holding back in your mind? Perhaps seeing the hope of the family cultivating spiritual veins, Qin Shenhe felt more relaxed than ever before, and even the tone of his speech was a bit detached. Uncle 13 is really smart, I can't hide anything from you. Qin Daoxian smiled, his face became serious again and said, Uncle 13, I want to order a few cargo ships from Yang's shipping line. Order a cargo ship? Qin Shenhe frowned. Why do I order a cargo ship? My Qin family's Zhanglong is usually enough to transport family supplies. Besides, the Feijin factory doesn't need so much spiritual or for the time being, right? Cough cough. Qin Daoxian pretended to cough and lowered his voice. Accurately speaking, it is not a cargo ship but a slave ship. Heard. Qin Shenhe didn't know what Qin Daoxian was thinking. Looking for the Yang family to buy slave ships, then the next step is to buy mortal female slaves from Izumo to multiply the population for the Qin family. In fact, Qin Shenhe has occasionally purchased slaves from Izumo over the years, but the number is not large. For example, the servants in Qin Lianjia's family came like this. But listening to Qin Daoxian's tone now, it is obvious that it is not as simple as buying dozens or hundreds of female slaves. He is going to make a big deal. Otherwise, they would not go to the Yang family shipping line to buy a special slave ship. Thinking of this, Qin Shenhe couldn't help but hesitate. Seeing that the family is about to accumulate enough spiritual stones to cultivate spiritual veins, now they are buying slaves and slave ships, plus the funds for purchasing spiritual ore and purchasing the great spirit formation from the auction house. Although there are many tens of thousands of spirit stones in the storage bag, they can't stand it. Seeing Qin Ziyan's hesitant expression, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but straighten his face and said, Uncle 13, you can't keep your word. Qin Shenhe was stunned by Qin Daoxian's question, and looked up and said, How come I can't believe my words? You forgot? You promised me before that as long as my Qin family earns 3,000 spirit stones a year, you promised me to let go of cultivating the descendants of the Qin family. How can I say nothing now? Hearing this, Qin Shenhe almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. He promised Qin Daoxian that he would consider cultivating the descendants of the Qin family as long as the family's annual income reached 3,000 spirit stones, but he did not expect that Qin Daoxian would be trained in such a way. If he knew what Qin Daoxian meant, he would not agree to kill him. Seeing Qin Ziyan's dark face, Qin Daoxian continued, Uncle 13, think about it, what does 100,000 spirit stones mean to my Qin family now? Do you know how many Fijians our family's Feijin factory can produce in a day? Full 5. This is only the output of my nephew and me a day. If my Qin family has 10 refiners, what will happen then? Hearing this, Qin Xinhe sneered, Don't coax me, are artifact refiners so easy to train? Even if the resources are sufficient, if one of the 10 monks can train a refiner, it will be a good incense. That's right. It's because the training rate of artifact refiners is not high, so we need to increase the number of cultivators in the family. And what do we rely on to increase the number of cultivators in the family? We have to rely on ordinary members of the Qin family. Therefore, it is imperative to buy slave ships and female slaves from Izumo. Qin Daoxian said this sentence not in a negotiating tone, but in the capacity of a Qin clan chief. Looking at the chatty young man in front of him, Qin Xinhe opened his mouth and said nothing in the end. Never mind, Qin Xinhe sighed, since the family has been handed over to you, it's up to you to decide these matters. Thank you, Patriarch, for your support. Qin Daoxian stood up and bowed to Qin Xinhe. Qin Xinhe waved his hand. Although I don't quite agree with your way of doing things, I can see that the family has shown a prosperous face in your hands. Daoxian, you are stronger than me. Qin Xinhe looked directly into Qin Daoxian's eyes and said with relief. Hearing this compliment, Qin Daoxian felt a little embarrassed. Chapter 47. 3 days later. The core business district of Guang'an Prefecture, Wush Treasure Pavilion. The goods of the 2 fellow Taoists will be delivered on time by our Wush Treasure Pavilion, so please rest assured. At the entrance of Wush Treasure Pavilion, a cultivator of the Wu family's foundation building bowed to Qin Daoxian and Qin Xinhe with a smile on his face. Then it's troublesome for the seniors, please stay. Qin Daoxian bowed his hands and bowed and said humbly. Wu Jiaji cultivator nodded. You too, please walk slowly. In a guest voice. Qin Daoxian and Qin Xinhe walked out of the gate of Wush Treasure Pavilion. Soon after the two left. A young cultivator in the store stepped forward and asked in a low voice, Uncle, why are you being so polite to the mere 2 qi cultivating cultivators? Wouldn't it be a loss of my Wu's dignity to do so? After hearing this, the foundation building cultivator glanced at the young Wu cultivator and frowned. Guangshuan, you must remember that in doing business in Guang'an Mansion, your sanity is more important than your face. The 2 cultivators just now are indeed not very high level, one has the 6th level of qi refining, and the other has only the 4th level of qi refining, but do you know how much profit they can bring to my Wush Treasure Pavilion? The young monk named Wu Guangshuan shook his head blankly. The Wu family cultivator stretched out 4 fingers and said, a full profit of more than 4,000 spirit stones. So much. Hearing this, Wu Guangshuan was stunned. He did not expect that the mere 2 qi cultivators could have such a rich net worth. They can make a profit of 4,000 spirit stones from Wush Treasure Pavilion, which proves that these 2 at least negotiated a business worth tens of thousands of spirit stones with Wush Treasure Pavilion. How could this not shock him, the fledgling Wu family cultivator? So, when doing business in Guang'an Prefecture, you can't judge people by their appearance and you can't judge the size of the business based on the customer's cultivation. There are millions of cultivators in our Guang'an house, among which there are not 100,000 or tens of thousands of foundation building cultivators. With so many foundation building cultivators, how many can have these 2 families? Besides, do you know what their background is? Uncle clan means? The Wu family cultivator said angrily, I mean keep your eyes brighter in the future, don't bring me the stinking problem of the eyes above the top that you got in the family and bring it to the Wush Treasure Pavilion, otherwise you're the experience assessment, the old man will definitely give you a fail. Sure enough, hearing this sentence, Wu Guangshuan's face turned pale immediately. Although the Wu family is a well-known foundation-building clan in Guang'an Prefecture, but because it is a large clan, the number of cultivators in the clan is also exceptionally large. If a qi-cultivating cultivator like him who came out to experience, fails the training test, the impact on his personal future will be devastating. In this regard, the practices of the major families are almost the same. It is true that a cultivator's spiritual aptitude is very important, but compared to the spiritual aptitude, Xinxing is more important to a family member. A cultivator with a bad temperament, even if he is cultivated to the foundation establishment or even the Zifu period, not only cannot bring much help to the family, but may lead to catastrophic disasters. In this regard, there are countless examples of mischievous family children who have caused trouble for the family due to their poor temperament and troubles. Therefore, the longer the family has inherited, the more emphasis is placed on cultivating the character of the family's children. When it comes to cultivating the character of the family's children, Whether it's the Yang family or the Wu family, or even the Zhou family with inflated self-confidence, they have done a good job. Walk out of Wish Treasure Pavilion. Qin Daoxian and the two walked in the bustling core business district, chatting while walking. How long do you plan to stay in Guang'an Mansion? Qin Xinhe asked casually. After pondering for a moment, Qin Daoxian smiled and said, "It will take some time before the slave ship ordered from the Yang family will arrive, and in addition to the need to choose a wife for the clan, why should I stay for 10 days and a half months?" Hearing this, Qin Xinhe felt rather regretful. Alas, as soon as you leave, even if the family's Feijin production stops, it makes people feel distressed to think about it. So, how important it is to increase the population of the tribe. Hearing this, Qin Xinhe had to nod and admit that there were too few cultivators in the family. So much so that Qin Daoxian, an important productive force, had to abandon the production work of his family's Feijin factory and came here to be responsible for transporting goods and purchasing materials. If there is one more monk in the family, this kind of errand work will never be his turn. Thinking of this, Qin Xian said, "Don't come to Guang'an House next time. Didn't you order a boat from the Yang family? Next time, I will go directly to Jianghu Island to pick up the goods and transport the spiritual mine. In the future, you will leave the errands to me, and you can concentrate on the production work of the family Feijin factory." This? Qin Daoxian hesitated for a moment, then nodded, "That's fine." Talking room. The two soon came to Zhou's auction house. Zhou's auction house is located in the most prosperous area in the core business district of Xianqing, Guang'an Prefecture. An inch of land and an inch of gold are not enough to describe it. Because the land and shops in this entire area belong to the Zhou family alone. Zhou's auction house is the most conspicuous one in this area. Qin Daoxian looked up and saw a group of quaint multi-story attic buildings standing in front of him. These attics cover an extremely wide area, and Qin Daoxian visually estimated that there were at least tens of thousands of square meters. At a glance, the entire street was occupied by this auction house. Even in the entire core business district, Zhou's auction house is a landmark building. Zhou's auction house has a total of 12 small auction houses. The largest auction hall in the middle is not open to the public at ordinary times. It is only open to the public when there is a major auction event. Qin Xinhe explained, "We are going to the 6th auction house today." Qin Daoxian looked around and finally found a capital number 6 written on the left side of the plaque in an attic. Right here. Seeing the destination, Qin Xinhe smiled. "Two Taoists, please stay." The two were about to enter the door, but were blocked by the Zhou cultivator who was waiting at the door. Seeing this, Qin Daoxian frowned and said, "Fellow Taoist, what does this mean?" Who knows that the Zhou family cultivator is not surprised and said, "This is the first time for the two fellow Taoists to come to my Zhou's auction house? Does this have anything to do with you blocking our way?" Qin Daoxian asked back. Fellow Taoist misunderstood. This auction is to prevent someone from bidding maliciously, resulting in the final auction of treasures, so a set of rules for verifying identity has been formulated. Verify your identity? The two looked at each other and Qin Daoxian asked curiously, "I don't know, what is the way to verify your identity?" "Simple, just check whether the amount of spirit stones in the 2 storage bags reaches 5,000 spirit stones, and then you can verify your identity." Hearing this, Qin Xinhe nodded clearly, while Qin Daoxian was almost dumbfounded. This has all crossed into the world of cultivating the immortals, and what about the verification of capital? Not enough funds to let in? Immediately, a rough-faced man walked by the two of them, but the Zhou cultivator did not stop the other party in the slightest. Qin Daoxian couldn't help asking, "Why didn't you stop him?" Fellow Taoist is joking, that is senior foundation establishment, how could he have made a malicious bid? Seeing the Zhou family cultivator's smiling face, Qin Daoxian was disgusted as if he had eaten a fly. He threw a storage bag at random and said, "This is our identification." The Zhou family cultivator took the storage bag and checked it out. Immediately, his expression changed and he respectfully handed back the storage bag, moved aside and said, "Two fellow Taoists, please. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.